Hi, this is Andrea Romano. I was the voice director on Batman the Animated Series, The Justice League, Avatar The Last Airbender, and a couple of other projects too. And you're listening to Nerd On.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Nerd On, the podcast you didn't need, but you deserve, and where all levels of nerd are welcome. All right, everyone gather around your electronic devices and dedicate your time to this episode.
Please.
All of our episodes are special to us and someone, but today we have something special. We are graced by the Lords above and one of the greatest orchestrators of our time and time ahead of us. We could say she directed some of your favorite performances from, I don't know, DuckTales, Animaniacs, Batman, Joker, Superman, the Justice League. We're going to be here a while.
Yeah, we're going to be here for a minute.
But we are here with Andrea Romano. Wow.
Welcome to the show.
So nice to be here. Thanks, you guys, for having me.
Thank you for taking
coming.
the time.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Heck yeah.
We actually met at San Diego Comic-Con, and that was so much fun. And you are gracing us in our studio with our
Yes.
audience.
I
Wow.
was
fantastic.
very happy to be invited. Thank you
The
for
Nerd
that.
on HQ.
Nerd on HQ. But yeah, let's get into this. I'm Josh.
Ollie. I'm Tom.
I'm Corey.
I'm Caitlin.
And this episode is brought to you in part by the Nerd On Nation, that is powered by
Patreon.
If you are new to what Patreon is, it is essentially an exclusive membership service in which you can support your favorite creators like, I don't know,
Maybe us.
Nerd On. And for as little as $1 to $5 a month, you get fun stuff like the Discord server. You get early access to episodes, bonus episodes, there's a lot. But check it out, nerdon.io/Patreon. And this episode is brought to you in part by our friends over at Comixology, the internet's #1 source for comic books. Check that out. And a little bit of every purchase goes to keeping the lights on.
Like
but
these.
yeah, nerdon.io/Comixology.
Mm.
That is the housekeeping.
It's done.
We are here.
Let's dive in.
Real quick, I have to ask. This is
Tom, like, coming in all sly.
this is terrible because I should have asked this before we started rolling. But do you have any qualms with any lewd languages?
You know, as you were doing the
Yeah.
intro, I was thinking I should have asked whether we can work blue or not.
Oh,
No, I have absolutely no problem.
Oh,
none
yeah.
whatsoever.
Obviously, as long as it's not hateful.
Heck yeah.
No,
we
God,
don't-
no,
Yeah.
gosh, no, gosh.
We're-
Screw.
No.
We're adults here.
Yeah, yeah.
This is mature content.
But very good.
Yes.
Very good. Okay.
Rated R, but you know.
Thank you.
We're
Thanks
not
for
here.
asking. I appreciate it. That was very kind of you to ask. Because some people could have a problem with
Yeah.
it.
No, I know,
Absolutely.
like, Weird Al works really clean.
Yep.
Yeah, he
He
does.
only likes clean language. So.
He's the nicest guy. Do you know him? Have you
I've
met him?
never met him. I know that you worked with
I
him.
did, and I hired him several times just because I dug him so much. And I loved hiring him to do something very unlike his persona, what he's known for,
Right.
which was to play a quite evil
Yeah.
character.
Oh.
And so even when I asked him how he wanted his credit, he said, maybe not Weird Al for this one, maybe Al Yankovic. But what's so interesting about my relationship with Al is my husband of 28 years, we just celebrated 28 years.
Oh,
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Congratulations.
He did the artwork for Al's original album, his first
Oh,
album.
very cool.
Isn't that the
Whoa.
coolest
That's
thing?
awesome.
That is
so
very cool.
Made me happy.
So we're already getting gems, and we're
I
like
like
5
See?
minutes in.
See, that's exactly.
I like how you just like threw out, do you know Al? Like,
I thought you might have, because
No,
he
I
does
wish.
appear at,
Oh, I love that.
at
Absolutely.
cons and places, and he does a really interesting setup. That we were with him in Denver when we're doing the Justice League, some reunion of some sort.
yeah.
And we flew together on the same plane, and we were chatting, and then I saw his setup at the Comic-Con, and they had like this little booth set up where it was like curtained off, and you kind of stood in line, and you got to go inside, and you had this one-on-one with him.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That was far more intimate than your average
That's
Comic-Con
dope.
activity,
come up
which
to the
is
table
so
and-
exactly, and
yeah.
there's so much cacophony around you and everything. But this
Yeah.
was like, and I thought, what a cool moment you
I
get to
love
have
that.
with Al. And
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Wow.
Oh, man.
That's
That was great.
cool.
I don't know where to go from here.
I'm sorry, I've already gone off.
I know.
No,
your-
We sent you
No.
all these questions. We're like, I feel like
Right out the gates,
You
you went
have
off.
so many stories though.
I have a million, and I'm writing a book. And I've been working on this for about the last 20 years. Whenever something wonderful, or I'd meet someone in a recording session, or something hilarious would happen, I would go home and just on a little desktop file write enough words to remind myself what that was that happened.
Right.
So
Yeah.
and it started
Smart.
like 20 years ago.
Wow.
So I have these fabulous stories that I'm looking forward to tell. And it's not just those wild and wonderful things, but also just the path that I took to get where I ended up
Here.
in my career. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was and I've been, I do a little bit every week or so. I get in there, I start writing for an hour and a half or 2 hours, and then it stops being interesting for me, and so I stop. And then I travel a lot. We've been traveling the world. And so then I'm gone for 9 days, and then I come back and I get into it. But what I do is basically just expound on a story that I made notes about. So whether it was meeting Buddy Hackett, and you're probably all too young to
my
even
God, no.
Okay,
No.
good. And I met him. I was a smoker many years ago, and I had just finished smoking a cigarette, and I was waiting for the actors to arrive, and I walk inside, and there's Buddy Hackett. He's arrived since I went outside, and I went over. Oh, Mr. Hackett, hi, I'm Andrea Romano. I'm the voice director. And he said, "Did you just smoke a cigarette?" And I said, "Yes, I'm sorry. Does this smell offend you?" And he said, "No,
I need one.
don't smoke.
Oh.
Oh.
Don't smoke. I just met you, and it could kill you." And he gave me this incredible hug.
Wow.
This man I had never met before, who had this quite intimate, hug with me. Just, kind, intimate.
Yes, of course.
Warm.
And
tender.
warm and
Yeah.
like thoughtful, and like he actually cared about, and so I quit smoking
Wow.
for like 7 months, and then I started again. But like stories like
That's
that,
a
those
good
are the
story.
kinds of stories that I
Yeah.
want to tell, where these strange little things happen. So I am writing a book, and I have. It's going to take me a while before I get it all done, but it's going to be simple. And it's also, I hope, inspirational for people about how I came from, not at all in this. I didn't even know there was a job called voice director for animation. I
Right.
didn't know there was that.
Also being the youngest agent.
That was cool.
Yeah.
That was really cool. And I never expected to be an agent either. I actually thought I was going to be an actor. I studied acting in my undergraduate work at
Yeah.
a place called State University of New York at Fredonia, which is up near Buffalo, New York. And I think
Shout
that
out.
might be part of why I never went to Chicago before this past week, because
part
it's
of it.
exactly the same
Yeah.
weather. It's, I was there for the winter of 1977 when it was 40 below
Oh my
zero.
goodness.
Yeah, people are not meant to live in that. They're
No.
not. They're truly
No.
not.
No.
And I vowed never, ever to be in that again once I was able to get out of it. And
I never want to
uh,
be cold again.
He's very, I never, but God is my
Never
witness.
again.
But I went to, then I ended up doing some dubbing supervision, which was a whole other part of my work that was so cool. And I'll talk about it in my book as well.
Yeah.
And I ended up going to Finland in February. So I was very
Wow.
much in that same kind of
Wow.
freezing cold.
Yeah.
My husband was with me. My husband's from Brazil. And he said, "Are those ducks walking on ice?" I'm like,
Nice.
"Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
That's Are those boats frozen in the harbor?"
Oh
Yeah.
my
Brazil,
gosh.
they don't
Yeah.
really have boats
Right.
frozen in the harbor. So very, very, fun to be in Finland no matter what. It was just cool to have. I was doing the dubbing supervision on the first Pokemon movie.
Oh.
I know there's a
my
strange
Deep
credit
cut.
that people
Oh my
don't
gosh.
That's me.
know.
That's my childhood right
Yeah.
there.
It was so wild because it didn't matter what I dubbed it in 5 different languages.
Whoa.
It was say Spanish, Italian, French, maybe German, and then we went over to Sweden and Finland and
You-
dubbed it there.
Did you were voice director for all of the languages?
Dubbing supervisor,
Oh, okay,
which
okay.
means that essentially, because I didn't speak all those languages, I have
Of
a
course.
very good working knowledge of all the Romance languages, but Swedish and Finnish, the words are this long
Yeah.
for like cup.
I was about to be
So-
shocked. I was like, how do you direct in all of those languages?
Basically, what you do, the truth of it is, any one of you could sit and watch an animated piece with foreign voices, foreign speaking language, and tell whether or not it sounds
Happy.
real,
Yeah.
Right.
whether
Yeah.
the acting sounds good,
Oh.
or whether it sounds like a 40-year-old woman trying to sound like a 12-year-old
Yes.
boy.
Yep.
All those things,
Yes.
really, because you have experience listening to these things and watching these things. And so I had a lot of experience with that specifically. So I could say, that's just not, that voice just sounds fakey. I'm sorry, it sounds fakey and cartoony.
Yeah.
And my job was to make sure that everything sounded really,
Genuine.
really good. For all the
yeah.
projects I worked on, Animaniacs, the first couple of episodes of everything I did for Spielberg, I went over and supervised the dubbing. And that makes, and here's a really cool thing about dubbing supervision that a lot of people don't know. It's not just what I just mentioned, but it's
Right.
also things like I remember, and I think it was Germany. I was supervising Kung Fu Panda, the first
nice.
animated feature.
Yeah.
Beautiful
Germany.
film.
It
Beautiful
really
film.
is.
And I was working for DreamWorks, and they've always been very kind to me about this kind of work. And they said, okay, I went for a meeting, and they said, okay, you're going to be dealing with that country, you're doing that country. Andrea's taking care of the figs, you're doing that, you're doing that. And the second time they said that, I said, I feel like an absolute idiot. What are the figs? And they said, oh, France, Italy, Germany, Spain.
Oh.
Okay. Okay, I'll do those.
Yeah.
And so I spent a week in each country doing the dubbing supervision. Sometimes I had to go back because what they wanted was, casting-wise, they didn't want just people with experience doing dubbing with that for animation or dubbing
Right.
at all. They wanted the equivalent of Jack Black. They wanted the
Oh.
local
Celebrity.
comedian that was
Yeah.
and also an actor and known in that territory. They
Right.
wanted a
Same,
celebrity,
like,
the
appeal
lake.
to appeal.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
same
yeah.
level of a Dustin Hoffman to come in and do that. And so that was really cool, first of all, to work with those actors who
I
do
bet.
that kind of work there. And then there would be things like, if you remember the film, there's a moment when Jack Black and Dustin Hoffman are climbing up the top of this mountain, and Poe, the character, starts washing his armpits in the pool of sacred tears.
Yeah.
And the Sifu says, Poe, we do not wash our pits in the pool of sacred tears. So as they're doing the dubbing, and I hear it in German, and I'm listening to the performance, I said, can you translate that back to me verbatim, what it is you're saying? And they said, Poe, we do not wash our armpits in the pool of sacred tears. And I said, there's a joke there you're missing.
Yeah.
This very sort of honorable, elegant, sophisticated character is saying pits as a kind of a slur. It's kind of
derogatory.
mocking. Exactly. And they thought, and they said, we have a very specific word for animal furry armpits.
Yeah.
And I said, we have to figure out how to make that work, because that's
Right.
exactly the kind of
That's what
humor
we
that we
need.
have to do. And so that made it fascinating for me, because it wasn't just verbatim dubbing. It was, how do we make this work for each territory? What will work in France that might not work in Germany? What will work
Yeah.
in Spain that might
Right.
not work in
Cultural
Portugal?
context.
Exactly. And that made it really fun for me. And I really enjoyed all of the ones I worked on, but I specifically could speak to the ones that I had initially cast and directed myself.
Right.
Wow.
Because I had worked on them over and over
so
and
not
over
just
again.
acting, but like true localization.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So,
Wow.
so like, you remember the Animaniacs song, Yakko's World, where
Oh,
he sings
yeah.
the countries of the world?
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
So
Very well.
every country had to sort of deal with that specifically for themselves as make it rhyme, which I don't envy
Oh my
the
God.
translators
No,
their
not
at all.
job. And they so in Germany in German they made it say, Germany you already know, which was just some way of, again,
Oh.
localizing and making it specific to the territory, which was just great fun.
Yeah.
Wow.
Really, really enjoyed that
Wow.
work.
Work ethic is a common language.
Yeah, it
Yes.
is.
That's what that story tells me. Is that like you can all say different things, but in the end of it all takes a lot of hard work, talented people,
Right.
and passionate people.
That's right.
to be
People
doing
who
it.
are
When we
willing to
watch-
spend hours and hours and
Yeah.
hours.
Mhm.
When we
So-
watch it, when we watch our cartoons here, it's all about like relating to things and talking to your friends about it. So I'm sure it's important to make sure that the kids around the world also feel like they know, what's happening, and they don't feel like they're watching a foreign thing.
Absolutely.
So I can see that being really
Exactly
important.
right. So they ideally these
Like
little
made for
kids
them.
watch They watch a feature film, and they believe that was actually created in their
For-
language
yeah.
for them, as
Yeah.
it should be.
Because a lot of these cartoons, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure it affects your own development of your own sense of humor and all
Right.
that stuff. And
Yes.
hearing
Yeah.
kids sit like that, like,
You think of, I mean,
goes a long
some of my
way.
earliest memories are of cartoons.
Right.
It was a really important part of my life. I was a cartoon fan from the youngest
Yogi
age.
Bear.
And
Yeah.
Yes, Yogi Bear and Quick Draw McGraw and Huckleberry
my
Hound,
God.
which was my personal favorite, Huckleberry Hound.
Yes.
And I've mentioned this before, but the reason is, if you guys know that show, it was the first time a cartoon character that I was aware of broke the fourth wall and looked right into
Into the
camera,
camera.
Yeah.
and spoke to me.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Yeah.
he could see, I was convinced
Oh,
that
yeah.
Huckleberry Hound could see me through the TV and talk to me. And the day I met Dawes Butler and said, Mr. Butler, Huckleberry Hound was my favorite character. And he spoke to me as Huckleberry Hound.
Oh my gosh.
And I
Chills.
lost my shit. I wept. I had no idea I would have that emotional reaction
Like a
to
visceral, like.
Yes, like when you smell something and you go,
Oh, yeah.
oh wow, that smells like my school bus when I went to school. And for
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah.
This was just zipped back in time, and I was so honored to get to know these people. And I mean, most of us are honored just to meet some of them
Right.
ever.
Yeah.
But I got to actually work with Mel Blanc and work with Dawes
wow.
Butler and
Oh,
Don
man.
Messick and all these remarkable people. And that was kind of a fun thing in my career too, as a casting director, where I kept a list of people I just plain wanted to work with
Yeah.
because
Right.
I thought they were awesome. And truly, you guys, the only one that I was not ever able to do
Ooh.
that I wanted, and it's such a nerdy thing, and I mean that in the best way, of course,
Yes.
was Alex Trebek.
Oh,
I
wow.
wanted to hire him so much. I met him a couple of times. I took my husband to a screening, a taping of the show,
Yeah.
which
yeah.
was really fun because we're both huge fans of Jeopardy. And, you know, I had asked him when I had met him at one of the Emmy events, you know, would you like to do voices? Oh, yes, I can do a lot of voices. And I was like, I know I watch you on the show. I hear you do things. I hear you do impressions. And how do I reach out to you? Oh, through the Jeopardy, production
Yeah.
company. And then there was one gig on a show that I was doing for DreamWorks that it required an Alex Trebek, but they wanted a comedian instead.
Oh. So close.
So close. So it was one of the last shows I worked on in my whole career, and I never got
man.
the chance to do it. And now he's sick. Bless his heart. Alex Trebek is.
Yeah, well, I believe
Again.
He's in
doing
remission.
well. Yeah, he's in
No,
remission.
he's back
Oh,
in
he's back. I didn't know
chemo.
that.
Oh, no.
Just back in chemo.
Oh.
But
and
the thing that's great about him is that he's staying strong about
he's
it.
Very
so
positive.
I love that. Like he's just reaching out to his fans and all
He's
that
an
stuff.
example to
his
us
announcement
all.
was
Yeah.
heartbreaking but touching.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he talks about, he's very candid. He talks
Yes,
about how
yeah.
he'll be in the middle of his day and suddenly, for no apparent reason, he'll just cry.
Mhm.
He'll just burst into tears. And this is one of the happiest human beings on the planet.
Yeah, right.
But he's facing a life-threatening disease. The
He's
fact that
emotionally
he's
aware.
survived this as far as he has and so well, and he looks fantastic.
He does. He looks great.
But there was another incident, and the doctor said right away, we got to get you right back.
Okay.
And so let's all,
Yep.
whatever we do, that we put that energy
Health
out there
first.
toward
Oh,
his
yeah.
health.
Yeah.
is
100%.
For Alex Trebek.
And then DreamWorks makes an animated series about the craziness that happens behind the scenes
Yeah,
of Jeopardy.
Jeopardy. And Alex Trebek has to voice
It's like
it.
he
Wouldn't
saves the
that be
world
fun? Ah!
before every show.
Yeah.
It's
I
great.
love this.
Episode, I'm
And then
telling you.
comes
I'm
and
ready.
films.
I'm
the
ready
show.
for this.
This
I like
is
that.
good.
And it prompts each, of the categories.
This is the
Ah.
kind of thing that can extend someone's life. And I
Yes.
say this because when we made the Jetsons at Hanna Barbera in the mid 80s,
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
I was the casting director there, and Gordon Hunt was the voice director, and we were presented with 41 new episodes. And I said, let's try to get the original actors. Let's
Yeah.
just see if we can't. Maybe they're still around, and maybe. And so we reached out to all of them, and George O'Hanlon, who was the voice of George,
George
Jetson,
Jetson, yeah.
had a stroke 6 to 8 years earlier and was mostly blind.
Whoa.
And I spoke with his wife on the phone, and she said, let me talk to him about it. I said, absolutely. Let me call you tomorrow, and after you've had a conversation with him. And I reached out to her the next day, and she said, I haven't heard him so happy, so
That is
excited
touching.
for 8 years. And so what we would do, because it was a very specific, it was a challenge, we would send him, I'll talk about a while ago, the scripts were ready a week in advance. Already that's unheard of.
Yeah, right.
They were ready a week in advance.
Oh,
We
my
would
heart.
send the script to Nancy O'Hanlon, George's wife. She would read the script word all the way to top, everything, stage direction, everything, camera pans, whatever was going
Wow.
on cassette.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
Shout
then
out.
when they would drive to the session from Westlake, I think they lived, to Burbank, they'd have to come. She would play the cassette for him so he could remember the story
Listen
and
to
have it
lines,
right there,
yeah.
exactly. And then Gordon Hunt, the director, would sit in the studio with George. I would sit in the booth and listen for any noise. And Gordon would feed him his lines, and he would echo them back because he couldn't read them off the
Right, yeah.
page. And he needed the coaching. He needed
Right.
Gordon to tell him how to do the line. Because remember, there were
Right.
words like Futuraka cycle.
Yeah, right.
And after a stroke, that's just not an easy word to say.
Right,
I have a
right.
hard time with it.
It's not easy. Yeah, I
and
was gonna
so, but what I know is that we extended this man's life. He had a reason to get up every
Yeah.
week. We
Yeah.
made 41 episodes and then a feature.
Yeah.
And
wow.
and his wife would say, I haven't seen his health is better, his attitude is better. He fights with me again. Which is absolutely an
That's
episode,
fulfillment. He's
an
getting
example.
he's getting
Exactly.
fulfillment out of it.
And I got all the original actors to come back. We got Dawes Butler,
Wow.
and Dawes Butler ended up coaching Penny Singleton, who played Jane Jetson, because she had dentures, and he needed to help her not click.
I didn't know that.
Which was so cool. And, everybody else, Mel Blanc, of course. And one
yeah.
of my prized possessions is a script from the Jetsons that Mel Blanc marked.
Wow.
And he would mark every word. One line underneath
Whoa.
it, 2 lines underneath it, a squiggly line here, an
They
accent
all
there.
meant
look.
something.
So he really mapped out his performance, which was absolutely fascinating.
My
That makes
My
sense.
Really
wife
cool.
does that with her VO script.
Neat.
She has like it's just even like separating a sentence,
Right.
and it makes so the delivery is
Right.
That's right. It's like diagramming a
Yeah.
sentence. It tells you, it reminds you what word you want to get to and what you want to hit and what's the more important part of how the sentence flows.
I put those squiggly shapes of
It
how
helps
the
a lot.
words sound.
It's a really good tool. I mean, everybody kind of highlights their scripts, but then you do something more to make yourself remember what it was you wanted to do that's special. That's
Right.
different. That makes your
You can be more
performance.
present that way because it's all written for you. You'd
Agreed.
be like, great. I
I
know
used-
the technical side of this.
Yeah, I used to actually do it with Shakespeare scripts.
Yeah.
Because
Oh.
if they're delivered
Yeah.
in a kind of a monotonous way, it's not real. But like if you mark it, you can get the certain inflections and translate it so it doesn't sound like
The emotional journeys.
yeah.
Do you know who's brilliant at that with Shakespeare specifically is Kenneth Branagh.
Oh,
Oh,
my God.
yes.
He is.
makes
100%.
Shakespeare accessible to anybody who will just sit and listen because he's just articulate.
Yeah.
He makes sense of those words, even if you don't know all those
Yeah.
what that meant back in the
Yeah.
1400s. It's clear to you what he's talking
Right.
about.
The intention.
Very,
makes the
very
intention
good.
Well,
very
yeah,
clear.
I mean, I'll speak very frankly, and we'll talk about it a little bit later in the show. But like, I will remember when I was in school, they were like, "Here's a book, read it," and I was like, "I don't know anything." And then I had to watch. Was it Hamlet? He did Hamlet.
Yeah.
I saw Hamlet. I had to watch the movie in order to be like,
Oh, great.
Oh.
Oh, that's a very cool example of
And-
how,
yeah.
and then you could read it and
And
understand
then I'm
it.
like, oh, they're humans.
Mhm.
Yeah,
They're
oh,
not
yeah.
machines throwing thousands of
out.
lines.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not just poets just
Yeah.
rambling out poetry. It's actually acting. It's actually things are happening. That's
Yes.
very
That's
interesting.
a really good one. To,
I wasn't, too smart as a child either. But, you know.
But I'm glad to know that you did go in and read
Oh,
it because that's the
It
joy.
was homework one, and also I was like, everyone knows about Hamlet. Everyone knows about Romeo and Juliet. Let me at least do some homework so I
Right.
can try to figure this out.
Good for
Yeah.
you. Good
But,
for you.
that Jetsons story, I feel like that's a movie right there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's like one of those
That's
last
neat.
ride films. It's
That's
like you
neat.
get all the legends of, and then they come out. They're like, let's do one more time, one great
Yeah.
show. It's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's
Like
the
a
way-
there's a topper to that. When we were making the movie, it took many sessions to record because it's a lot more than a 22-minute script.
oh, yeah.
And so we had George come in several times to do his lines. And he came in one week and he just was not feeling well. As a matter of fact, at the beginning of the session, he said, I would always walk him into the session and sit him down,
Yeah.
put him on my arm. It was very sweet, like grandpa. And I'd sit him down and ask him how he was. And he said, put your ear next to my ear. And so I just put my head right next to it. And with every heartbeat, you could hear whoosh, whoosh. His blood was rushing through his head with an audible whoosh.
Whoa.
It was crazy. I said, George, how can you hear anything? He said, I'm having a hard time. And I said, well, let's do what we can. We don't have to finish all the recording today. We'll do what we can.
Yeah.
And so Gordon directed him, and we could just tell that his energy was just not going to match, another line that he might have done a few weeks earlier. We had to. So Gordon said, George, let's just send you home today. When you're feeling better later in the week or next week, we'll bring you back in and finish up the work. Fine. So I called for his wife to come in from the waiting room, and she came in, and suddenly, and I can paint this picture for you. Gordon Hunt is here. George O'Hanlon is here. They're both in chairs looking my way. Nancy O'Hanlon is standing a little bit off to George's side. Suddenly, George's head pitches forward onto her chest, and he has another stroke right there in the recording studio.
Oh my God.
And I was 911. They were there in, I swear, 2 minutes, you guys. It was
Whoa.
astonishing. We were at Hanna Barbera, old Hanna Barbera, so 3400 Cahuenga West.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And St. Joseph's Hospital is very close by
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Burbank.
yeah.
And they were there in a second, and they took him over, and we followed in the cars, and essentially they revived him. So he essentially died in that recording session.
Whoa.
And they had their spiritual shit together, and she said, just keep him alive so the kids can come say goodbye, and then we'll let him go.
Whoa.
So George O'Hanlon kind of died in front of me, which,
Wow.
let me go that way, doing what I love.
Right,
exactly.
happy. And, like I said, with his life extended, he probably would have died a few years earlier.
Right.
Right.
Because he couldn't see, he had nothing.
Getting him out of bed, like you
exactly.
said, yeah.
No
Makes a
reason
lot
to
of
get up
It
in the
gave him
morning.
purpose.
So, but that goes in the movie then. If
Yeah.
that movie gets
Wow.
made, that needs
Yeah.
to be in there.
That's
Yeah.
the tearjerker. That's the,
Yeah.
oh, man.
The what do you call it when it's happy and sad?
Bittersweet.
Bittersweet.
Yeah.
That's it.
Very
Very
bittersweet.
bittersweet.
I was like, my life?
Wow.
Let's try to get some of these questions.
Yeah.
Okay,
for
one,
sure.
two. Sorry.
There's been,
No,
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 need
no.
to apologize.
This
Your
has been
life has been
phenomenal.
and is amazing,
Thank
and there's
you.
so many stories there to tell. It's kind of hard to direct it to certain questions when there are so many questions to be asked.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Hit me.
Since I
You wanna
started
start?
with that. Okay. All right. Let me direct it then. How did voice acting and directing become a path for you? You've had a winding path up to that. But
Indeed.
The summarized version.
Good. I studied acting. I wanted to be an actor. I loved acting. I just thought it was incredibly cool. My parents were very practical and said, "Are you aware of how hard it is?"
Are you ready to star?
And I was like, "Yeah, I am, but nothing else thrills me the way acting does." So I went to undergraduate school at Fredonia, New York, and then to graduate school at Rutgers in New Jersey.
Wow.
And at that point, I had switched to theater history just because I was in the acting program and still taking, but my major was theater history, which is a phenomenal way to look at civilization.
Yeah.
If you can, I mean, some of our earliest written work are the plays of Aeschylus, which talked about how life was then. And so historically, they're just a fantastic way to find out what was going on. Now, you have to keep in mind that there was satire and all that.
Theatrics.
Exactly
Right,
right.
right, right.
But basically, it tells you what was going on in the world. So theater history, and I was very heavy at this time. This would have been like 1979.
Was
I
this
weighed
the
200
80
pounds.
that you picked
Yes.
up? Okay.
And I just college, the food
Oh, yeah.
program was like
Spaghetti and French
Terrible.
fries.
correct. And so
Spaghetti and bread.
exactly right. And so and in New York and that part of the world, you just put another couple layers of clothes on, and
Yeah,
you kind
yeah.
of can hide it. Then you come to California, you're like, oh,
Take
guess
off-
what?
Wait, I have to take
Less
these off?
and
Oh,
exactly.
no.
Yeah.
But what I learned too was that aside from the fact that people here are much more concerned about their health, they just are in general. And as shallow as it may be, they're much more concerned about how we look because it is an industry of on-camera
Right.
actors
Appearance.
that is all
Yeah.
around in the city. And and you can exercise year round here without spending a lot of money. You don't have to belong to a gym to be able to go work out on a treadmill. You can just walk
Right,
every day of
'cause
the
the
year
weather
practically. It
permits
allows
it.
you. Or swim, both
Right.
of which are excellent exercises and both of which I got majorly into. And it took me about 4 years to take it all off. But during that time, I needed to work. And I contacted one of my dear friends from Fredonia who was an agent at the Ann Wright Agency, which is a theatrical agency. It doesn't exist anymore, but he was an agent there. And he called me up one day from Los Angeles. I was living in San Diego. And he said, come up for an interview. There's a voiceover agent's assistant who's been in a car accident and will be coming back to her job, but they need a temp. And it just might be interesting for you to learn about. I was like, I'm there, well, it's like
Whatever,
the
sign me
phone-
up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I showed up, interviewed for. This was Don Pitts, voiceover agent. So sweet, such a sweet man. I'm going to move this microphone because I've popped now 3 times.
No, go
just
for it.
like this.
all
I can
good.
hear
Do
it
what you
myself. I was like,
gotta
no,
do.
I popped.
I can
I
clean
should
that
know
up.
not to. Oh, good. Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
I forget they have the software for that now.
Oh, yeah.
Just runs the whole thing and then goes, bye.
Is my level still good? I didn't
Oh,
screw it.
yeah,
Okay,
great.
She's used to the
Thank
technique.
you.
I have terrible technique. So he was
Anyway. So I came up and what was meant to be a 2-week temporary job replacing Vanessa Gilbert. I ended up doing that work there for a year, 2 years or so because Vanessa decided not to come back.
Oh.
And Vanessa Gilbert then became a killer voiceover agent at both TGMD, where she was a partner, and now she's at, isn't this terrible? I can't think of where she is, but she's awesome, wonderful agent. And so I was there being an agent's assistant, and then at maybe a 4-month into it, they franchised me as an agent, which was really
Wow.
cool.
Very cool.
Really cool. So for a very
Wow.
short period of time, I
So you
was
kind
the
of fell
youngest
into it,
agent.
really.
I
Like-
fell into it, and I loved it because I understood when actors said, my performance is going to be better at 2 p.m. than it is going to be at 9 o'clock. My voice is going to be in a better placement for those deeper trailers
Yeah.
and all that stuff. And I understood what it was like when
Right.
they would say, I need, more than a half hour to travel from there to there, find a parking space, because I was still getting used to what Los Angeles was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the
Yeah.
panic that an actor feels being late is a terrible feeling. And
Oh,
you don't
yeah.
ever want that to be the feeling of going into an audition or for a job. And so I fell into that in a very pleasant way. And I think actors responded to me well because I was on their side
Right.
and trying to help them do everything better, get the material for them sooner, get whatever they needed, parking instructions,
'Cause you
whatever I
understood it,
could.
yeah.
And then also on the other side, I understood what I just kind of fell into this too of understanding what an advertising agency was looking for when they said, this is what I want.
Mm.
And so I just got it. And I learned from Don Pitts, and I learned from the booth director. And at that time, there was like one booth director, and
wow.
every agency had their own booth director. Now there's,
Whoa.
it's all different because everybody's
Oh,
got
yeah.
their own booth at home.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The problem with that is if you're not a good self-director
Oh,
and
yeah.
you could really use somebody else's, listening to it and giving you some notes, then it's not as good to have a home. You should
Right.
go into your agent's office and actually audition there and let the director
Yeah.
direct you there. But for those who can self-direct, my goodness, how convenient is that? You do 5 auditions before you even
Must
have
be
your
nice.
first cup of coffee
Yep.
or whatever. It's remarkable. So anyhow, back to me.
This is your episode. This is your
Yeah,
episode.
there you go. I was headhunted at Abrams Rubloff was a very large agency. They had Frank Welker and June Foray and Paul Winchell and remarkable talent, and probably 300 often working voiceover actors
Wow.
at that point. That was a lot.
Yeah.
And then a small boutique agency reached out to me because they had a very strong on-camera commercial department, and most voiceover agencies are located in a commercial agency.
Right.
And so they very strong on-camera department, but no voiceover department. And that meant that their clients had to go out to other agencies to get their voiceover activity. And those other agencies would want to sign them across the board. And so they were
Opportunity.
losing clients.
Oh.
So special artists said, we need a voiceover agent.
Oh.
So I went over and started their voiceover department.
There you go.
Holy smokes.
And brought some people over from Abrams who were willing to come over, and then just really built up the people that were already there as on-camera people, but they needed to learn voiceover. Sometimes I had to send them to workshops and just go, you've got the potential, but I don't have the time here in a simple audition I've got 10 more people waiting after you to actually teach you how to do voiceover. And so I would do that, or some just had a good instinct for it. And, commercial voiceover, directing that and acting for it has the same kind of requirements that theatrical voiceover does, which is, who are you talking to?
Mhm.
What's the most important word in that sentence? Don't swallow the product name. You want that actually to be the most important word. And how do you feel about this product? This is the best skin cream. Even if you're announcing, you have to believe it. You have to have an opinion. So that was kind of fun, I think, for the clients to have somebody actually directing them that way as an actor, as
Right.
not just a voice, but as an actor. And then I was at Special Artists for maybe, a couple of years. I forget exactly. I could look it up. It's probably on IMDb or something. I could actually track it down that way. And then I was reached out to by Ginny McSwain at Hanna Barbera. She was the casting director there. And it's so dear because she invited me when I was working with her. She would call me for me to submit people to her, and she was great. She would see my people and very, very kind. And she invited me to come watch sessions. And okay, I would go and watch some sessions, especially when I had a client on one. I would go and watch Frank Welker and Paul Rubens, who was doing.
Oh man.
This was before Pee Wee and all
This is
these
so cool.
wonderful people. And then she called me and said, I'm going to leave Hanna-Barbera and I'm going to go to Marvel. This was a time when cartoons were just blowing up. They were essentially 22-minute commercials
This
for
right.
is the
toys.
time when everything was like Sons of this, right?
That
All
was
the-
that, exactly right. And Muppet Babies and everything, Pink Panther and Son,
Scooby-Doo.
Pup,
Yeah.
exactly right.
Oh.
And so there was so much work that they needed a lot of voice directors out there, and Ginny was going to leave Hanna-Barbera to become a voice director, which is a perfectly understandable
Right.
step
Of course.
up.
Transition, yeah.
And so she called me and said, I'm going, and I wanted to, speak to you specifically and tell you. I said, oh my God, who's going to be replacing you? Because you've been so generous to me. And you see my client. And she said, we don't know yet. We're seeing a couple of people. And the next day she called me and said, Andrea, are you interested in, would you, and in typical cartoon style, my phone was left spinning in the air as I got
As
in my
you-
car
as
and went
you-
over
Dash.
and rushed to Hanna-Barbera, the Fred Flintstone feed to get there. And met with Gordon Hunt, who I had met before when I came in and just watched some episodes. And they hired me the next day.
Wow.
And I gave my notice at Special Artists and left very shortly thereafter and started right at Hanna-Barbera. And it was
Wow.
heaven. It was heaven. And, Hanna-Barbera has been accused of being a factory. And it was. It was a factory that made cartoons. But they made some of the best cartoons ever. Scooby-Doo is still being made.
Oh yeah.
It's just
How many iterations,
remarkable. I
yeah.
know. And then shows like, you talk to people about what shows they think of as in their youth and whether it was Smurfs or, the Super Friends,
Oh my
which was
gosh,
such
yeah.
a different series than any of the superhero series that I
Yeah.
worked on, or any of those shows that were, instrumental in their lives. They think about the main title sound of Quick Draw McGraw or,
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That was my
Wally Gator. Was that yours?
Draw was
yeah,
my-
yeah, good one, good
El
one.
Kabong.
Yes,
Yeah.
and Baba Louie, which they
yeah.
talked about remaking that show, and there was just absolutely no Baba Louie.
Oh.
No, that was a derogatory way of
Oh, yeah.
depicting Hispanic.
Oh.
So much of that stuff, stuttering characters. We
But
couldn't do stuttering characters
During that
anymore.
time,
Oh.
we didn't. It wasn't meant to be that way, but now we're in a
Yeah,
climate
it's a
where it's a little
different
bit more
climate.
sensible. or
I
sensitive to it.
didn't think right now, and I
Yeah.
didn't. There was no malice intended
it
at
was
all.
not.
It
Right.
was all in good fun. It was all making fun. And of course, here we are in Los Angeles, and our Mexican dear friends are right there in Mexico, and so it was easy to access those accents. And this is always my example about what a genius Mel Blanc was. If you watch a Speedy Gonzalez cartoon, he is every Mexican accented mouse in that cartoon.
Oh.
Yeah.
And they all sound completely different.
Whoa.
I mean, there's like six
Yeah,
of
I know.
them.
I
And they're
know.
all, one's more nasal, one's pitched higher, one's lower, one's raspier, one's fat sounding. They're all different,
right.
but they all have the same Hispanic accent, the Mexican specific
Right.
accent.
Right,
It's
right,
very,
right.
very
And there was
cool.
actually a time that I think Warner Brothers tried to retire Speedy Gonzalez because they thought it was offensive, but the Hispanic community was like, no, we like Speedy Gonzalez.
that's very cool.
Leave him be.
Excellent.
No, yeah, one of my
So-
friends was like, "Yeah, that's the kind of Mexican from the inner city, from the outer city," and I was like, "Oh, there's different kinds."
Oh,
He's like,
yeah.
"Yeah, think of it like New York and California, like they speak very differently." I was
Yeah.
like, I
Very
learned something.
interesting.
Today I
interesting.
learned.
So I was at Hanna Barbera for, I left there in 1989 when many of my friends who were there, executives and producers and stuff, left to form Warner Brothers TV Animation. It didn't exist.
Oh.
And just before that, I had been reached out to by someone from an advertising agency, Leo Burnett Advertising, who was had been, let's see, I worked with him when I was an agent, often submitting actors to him for various commercials he was working on. He left there to form Disney TV Animation.
Wow.
So this
Oh.
is like 1986, 87.
Disney TV
empires
Plus.
are building.
I know. I was around for that. It was so cool. Just happened to be alive and in the business during those times when those things were
Yeah.
expanding. And so they asked me to come and direct DuckTales, which was really cool. I did the first DuckTales. Woo! Gotta say that.
Oh,
DuckTales,
yeah.
Woo! And did that for, I forget however many years we did that. It was fantastic. And then the Warner Brothers team went over and they let me stay at Hanna-Barbera and do DuckTales. But when Warner Brothers, I think there was such an exodus of Hanna-Barbera employees going over to form that they were like, nah, that's one too many. You can't do them and us. You have to leave Hanna-Barbera.
Whoa.
And that was really scary because all I had was one series,
Whoa.
Tiny Toon Adventures. But there was this guy that was the executive producer, Steven Spielberg.
Oh, okay. All
It's like,
right.
okay,
I guess
I
that's
think I can
Just
take a
him?
chance
Was it-
with him.
Was it
I think
Steve
that
or
will
Steven?
work.
Probably
Which one was
safe.
it?
Yeah, right.
Not familiar.
And so that was absolutely joyous. Hard work. Hard. I mean, literally, I went over to the building that we were in, which was at the Sherman Oaks Galleria, Sepulveda and
Oh, yeah.
Ventura.
Yeah.
And it was an office building. It was not an animation studio per se. And my office, which was essentially a closet,
Air quotes.
Oh,
Yeah.
exactly, was in the hallway where all the editors were. So there were no windows because they needed soundproof rooms to do the editing.
Right.
Oh.
And I worked for the first, 2-3 months on an overturned box with a paper Rolodex because that's what we had. We didn't
Wow.
have computers yet. And a telephone. That was it. That's what I had to work from
Wow.
to cast Tiny Toons.
And you make magic out of that.
And we did. We were
Wow,
able to.
yeah.
It was fantastic. It was, it's kind of that thing of, invention is,
Yeah.
whatever you have around you, you make it work. And
Restriction breeds creativity.
that's it. So I could, an overturned box was all I needed. I
Yeah.
really, and a yellow pad and pencils.
It has storage. You could.
Exactly. It was quiet enough I could scream, damn it! Nobody could hear me.
Little catharsis.
It
That's
was
good.
great. I could listen to auditions. That was cool without annoying everybody. And
Wow,
I'll
yeah.
tell you guys, for these first few series for Warner Brothers, I auditioned hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people for every new project.
Oh my god.
So I was listening to tapes all hours of the day and night. And I had to have some volume because you need to hear everybody's
what it's
performance, right?
actually doing.
And so, and that could just be devastating to an editor who's next
Yeah.
door.
Yeah,
Just going, I don't need to hear any more people say that same copy over and over and over again. And so it was kind of nice to be in that kind of soundproofed area. But we made, Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain. And then after those kind of very cartoony cartoons, Bruce Timm, who had been on Tiny Toons or Animaniacs, I forget which one we worked on first together, storyboard artist, he came to me and I think I lucked out because I don't think he knew any other voice directors. I was the only one he had ever been really aware of and could walk up to my office
To
and
your
go,
benefit.
I know, I was so grateful.
He knew the right one.
Well,
That's right.
we learned so much together.
Oh, that's
and,
cool.
Oh my God, yes.
That's
he was like
fascinating.
an absolute encyclopedia of all things DC and Marvel and everything. I mean, he just, and was very, very willing to share it to a woman, which is a different,
Dynamic,
thing.
yeah.
And what I wanted very specifically in working on this, and one of the reasons I said yes, I wanted to do it was I wanted to make it a cartoon series that was. Did you hear that? That was my stomach. That was so loud. Excuse me. I wanted to make it accessible to women. I wanted it to be a series that women wanted to watch. I wanted it to be sexy. I wanted it to be something that women could relate to, that it wasn't just fighty, fight, fight, fight.
Right.
I loved the idea that they wanted to make it dark, that it wasn't going to be the Adam West Batman, which
Yep.
was the only one I was familiar with.
Yeah.
And, girls, during the time when I was growing up, we didn't read Batman cartoons. We didn't read superhero comic books. We read, if we read, comic books. Archie and, Veronica and Betty. And we watched, the things were, romance comics, where the women's tears are like.
Right.
But we weren't, not, many of us did not. And so I needed that help from all those guys that knew, whether it was Paul Dini or Bruce Timm or, any of the writers, Bob Goodman, or these guys that just literally
Lived in it.
encyclopedia. They knew it so well. And especially it would help when I was casting something. It was the first time somebody like Red Tornado would show up.
Yeah.
And I'd go, I need just a quick where, origin, what, how
Where's
his
older,
humanity?
younger, where does he fit? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so is this a one shot? Are we going to see him in this one episode and never hear from him? Or are we going to have him in the next 20 episodes? Which
Right,
means
makes a
a
big
little bit
difference.
more. It does.
Right.
Because, the way the Screen Actors Guild pays for cartoons, voice acting, essentially, you get 3 voices for one price. So I
Right.
bring an actor in for scale and they do 3 voices for me. So versatility is excellent.
Right.
It really benefits the actor. They get much more chances for work. So in an instance where there was going to be a Red Tornado who was going to have 4 lines in one episode and we'd never see again, that would probably be a role I would give to somebody who's already going to be there and just have them do a slightly different voice for that character. If it's going to be a character that's going to show up for the next 20 episodes, it's likely I'd cast it and find someone new out there that
Right.
I've got on my list of people I want to bring
You
in.
wanna work with,
right,
yeah.
Or I had auditioned for the Justice League, let's say, and they didn't get a role, but I wanted to keep them in mind because they were second choice for 3 roles.
Yeah.
And they're just that good and they deserve a chance.
Where's
and
Alex
so,
Trebek? Where's Alex Trebek? It's like, he's right here.
and I would always try to bring in as many different people and give them a chance. And what was so lovely is after I was working long enough, agents knew from their clients coming back and saying, it's fun. And Andrea Romano, animated session. And all of them weren't fun, but, I tried. That was a big part of my job, was to make it a very pleasant experience for everybody in the room.
Yeah.
That it was like a party. That it was like this, where we sit and rap and chat and talk and have fun and tell stories and then get the work done too.
Right.
And you do it in a way that people don't feel like they're being,
Right.
and because you don't want to take the fun out of it. If you're not
Right.
having
Well, that's
fun.
that actor background that you have. You got to make sure that they're in the right mind space to give the performance you need.
Absolutely. To intimidate an actor or to make them feel bad is not going to get you a better performance. Actors are so sensitive, and that's what I love. I
Yeah.
love that actors are sensitive because that's why we hire actors. We don't hire technicians.
Mm-hmm.
We want that sensitivity. We want you to have access to your
The emotion,
emotions
The
so
spectrum
that
to spill it out on
really-
screen.
quickly. There's not. It's kind of end result acting, which some actors have a hard time with because we don't have all that rehearsal time that
Right.
you do when you're doing a play. You have to get to that point
Immediately.
of rage within like 2-3 takes.
Yeah.
And if you don't, I'm going to take you there myself. And that was also a trick because
Ooh,
I didn't
like
ever
tricks.
like an actor to know that they were being line read, but the actor would say, we are not going there. I said, nah, you wait 10 times. You heard that.
You need some
You know
food?
what?
We got some
used,
snacks.
you know
We
what?
got
We used to
snacks.
have to. Kevin Conroy, Batman.
Oh.
His stomach used to make so much noise that we would have a belly baffle for him, a pillow that we would put over his belly
my
when he
God.
recorded because it would ruin a really good take.
Okay.
And I
Now
feel
it's
like
full
I'm
circle.
Write that down. Next
See?
time he's on the
See?
show.
A belly baffle.
We're gonna
There
get
you
him
go.
a belly baffle.
We actually had Kevin on the show.
Aw.
And in the moment,
Sweetheart.
you're talking about like meeting somebody, we all lost, like, he said.
Isn't he the coolest?
he is. He
He's
really is the
so
coolest.
dear. I love him so. He has a wonderful apartment in New York, and he's got this little guest accommodation next to it. And whenever I stay in New York, I stay there, and I refer to it
Oh.
as the Bat
Bat
Cave.
Cave.
Yeah. It's like, is the Bat Cave available next weekend? Oh
That's
yeah.
nice.
I wanted to
Very
ask a
cool.
That's
question.
awesome. Yes.
You talked about creating an atmosphere that felt open and friendly, getting the work done, but making sure that everyone's having a good time.
Right.
And anywhere online you look Andrea Romano up, you see that you are kind of the champion of making sure everyone's recording as a group setting rather than the sole person in the booth.
For sure.
What made you kind of push that approach?
There's several reasons. Artistically, it makes sense. Wind, I heard it. Artistically, it makes sense because half of acting is reacting.
Mhm.
So you ask me a question and I'm going to respond based on the way you asked it of me.
Right.
If you had said, "What made you do that?" I would respond in a different way, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a really fun way to get real acting and reacting. The other thing is practical wise, it makes great sense because I rehearse a scene first, I run the scene. Let's do a little different next time. We run the scene the second time. We know right then and there if it worked.
Right.
Right.
And maybe a pickup from you and a pickup from you, and then we're covered. If I have to record you separately, I have to remember what you did just before, what you
Oh,
might do afterwards,
man.
because you're not recorded yet either, but you're
Yeah.
not in the same session as her. And so I have to get maybe 5, 6, 7 more takes for every single line
Just in case.
to make sure I can cover, because maybe you were speaking about at this level and she's now speaking at this level and you don't sound like you're in the
Right.
same room together having a conversation. So practicality wise, it makes great sense. And actors like it more.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
do.
yeah.
They like it.
Yeah.
That's
and
what we've heard.
They do. They like it.
Yeah.
And every once in a while when a feature has had the opportunity to get a couple of actors together, they're like, oh, this is so much better.
Yeah.
And I think why it's not done, and I'm not trying to cast aspersions on the current crew of voice directors,
Right.
but a lot of them are untrained. They aren't from the acting field. They're really just somehow thrust into that position.
Right.
Right.
And for them to handle 6 actors, and actors are wonderful and crazy and children, and you have to herd them and get them in
Yes.
the room all together.
Yeah.
and
Cat
things.
wrangling.
And exactly. And then there's an engineer and a second engineer, and then there's a
Maybe the
producer
client.
and the client, and there's all these other, and you've got to, there's a guy keeping the log
Gotta
over here.
juggle it all.
And you've got to
Gosh,
make sure
gosh.
everybody is getting their
What they need.
That's right, what they need. And so that's hard for someone who doesn't have a lot of experience. And I'm convinced that I was pretty good at that because I come from a family of 8 kids.
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
wow.
So just navigating the
Multitasking.
dinner table was
Right. Oh, of
excellent
course,
training.
of course.
Excellent training. I think cheerleading was also a good training ground for,
Right.
you know.
Yes.
And so there was a sense of togetherness, and what also would happen that was really cool is people would say, I have a whole other idea about that little tiny exchange between us two. Can we do that again? Just the two of us run that scene? Sure, absolutely. And what was so great about that is smart people, actors who had experience, would just say, can we? I got an idea, and they would dive in.
Oh, cool.
People who haven't would say, I kind of have this idea that if we were to, and then the description takes 5 minutes. To
And
run the
then-
scene would have just taken 30 seconds. So
Right.
just run the damn scene. You know what I mean? It just makes sense. Just do it. Don't tell me about it. You don't have to convince me. If you have an idea, I'm delighted to hear it. Go for it. Dive in. If it doesn't work, great. And you never want to tell an actor no.
Right.
No, I mean, no wasn't really in my vocabulary. Even if an actor gave a horrible read, the first words out of my mouth was good. Okay, let's try another one, because you want to always make the actor feel like they're
Right.
on the right path at least. And then you direct them where, and I was talking before about how you give a line reading, which is you just go, okay, so your line is, we've got to get over there. And you're not frustrated enough, a little bit more. We've got to get over there. Now you got to go 10 inches bigger. We got to get over there. And then I would just go, echo me. You got to get over there. And then right away, they would just do it that second. We got to get over there. So they're literally echoing me.
Right.
So they
Right.
bring it right up to where I am. And they don't even, and I wasn't trying to trick them, but it was just a way for them to know, don't be embarrassed to go that
To
big.
progressively
Right.
get there.
Exactly. And so if they have to build to it, that's fine.
Give
and then
me
you just
more.
move right on. And then they don't go, wow, I was just line read.
You
know?
it's a lot of like the improv of like yes and
Right.
you yes and them building them up to that
That's
point.
right.
Because you can start an improv scene and have it be kind of stiff and
Right.
like everybody's but that can become something wonderful if you keep encouraging it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Encouraging it. That's the
Yeah.
word. You
Yeah.
always encourage.
Tara
Absolutely.
Strong actually spoke about it and was saying like how the voiceover industry is, like I said, a vacuum without you, because she was saying how like there's a lot of voice directors who, like you said, are not experienced in that, and they will just do line read after line read after line read after line read, and
It
you
takes
know,
the acting out of
And
it.
that's what I said. That's when you
Yeah.
could use a technician instead of an actor.
Right.
well,
You don't,
and it comes to where you casted people and then they get involved. They don't say yes if they don't want to do it.
Right.
And so they
Right.
will get invested in the character. Like, I don't think the character at this point would have said it that way. But then if you're directing and saying like, just say it that way, then
Right.
it takes it like the, why am I even here?
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Or, or giving the actor a chance to, and that's something that I always say, especially at the end of an audition, was, is there anything I didn't let you do that you wanted to do? Because the worst
great.
is to have an actor drive
Feel.
home going, "Damn it, I had one more take in me that I didn't
should've done
ask
that."
for.
They
Yeah.
wanted
That
to
would have been
explore it and
right.
they had no opportunity.
Cor-
And that'll
and-
sit
right.
with them for weeks.
It will. I know it will. It will
not-
eat
if
away
not
at
months.
them. And then they'll hear the person who got the job and they'll go, that was my idea and I never got to do it. So I always give that one last, is there anything you didn't get to do that you want? And again, that's because I was an actor too and I want them to be comfortable. But there've been some very interesting moments of, I always walk an actor up to the microphone when this first time I'm working with them because I want them to know that I'm just,
I'm
there's
here
a good,
with you.
yes, and there's a good separation. That glass does create a bit of a,
It's terrifying.
Right.
I would prefer to be in the room with the actor, but
Of
I make too
course.
much noise. I
Every
just make
every
too much noise.
furrowed brow on the other side of the glass is
It's a total
horrifying.
Well,
mental thing.
And I
Yeah.
always try to tell people they're probably furrowing their brow about what they're
Lunch.
ordering for lunch.
lunch.
Exactly. It has nothing to do with
Every
your
time.
performance. Exactly. But I liked walking actors up to the microphone. Sometimes I had to record on a Saturday or a Sunday because of the actors' availability, celebrities often. And I remember watching Weeds. Do you remember that show?
Yes.
Weeds?
Yeah.
And the young actor Alexander Gould.
Mhm.
Alexander? I think that's right. And he was so wonderful. I loved his work so much. And I wanted to have him come in and play in one of the movies we were making, Jimmy Olsen, because he was just the right age. His voice had just
Oh.
cracked. It was already in that.
Yeah.
It kind of still cracked a little bit, and I liked that. It was right for the
Nice little quality. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it was a Saturday record. I was recording him and John Noble. John Noble was going to play Brainiac for me. And so I bring Alexander, I think.
Alexander.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I bring him up and I set him up and I'm like, thank you for recording on a Saturday. I'm so glad to get you. I'm a huge fan of your work on the show. And you've done voiceover before, right? And he looks at me with those big, beautiful eyes and he says, I'm Nemo.
Oh.
I went, oh my God, I'm such
Oh
an
my
idiot.
God.
I'm such an idiot. Of course, I knew that, but I just hadn't put it together in that
Yeah.
moment, that
Oh.
Saturday morning. And,
Right.
and I'm like, and now I've lost all credibility with you, haven't I? Because I love
course you
your
are.
work so much in Nemo. You were killer good. But it was just one of those things where you just go, you think you got it all together. And like, no.
I would always
Yeah.
say like, well, so you got it.
So yeah.
So you got it.
So
So
I
I,
guess-
really, I'm just going to slate you and you just go.
All right.
It was great.
I'll walk myself out then. So, see you later.
I know. I'm an idiot and I'm sorry.
Ollie?
You have a question?
Well, you were talking about how like you bring the actors together for the recording session, and I know even having everybody in the same room, we talked about like people coming in with their problems from the day. Do you have any specific techniques to use to kind of like break the ice?
Yeah.
Get everybody like in the energy that you want them to be in.
Do
Yes.
we need a belly baffle?
I'm so sorry.
It's,
Oh,
it's
it's
not going
fine.
to pick it up at all.
I had breakfast and everything. I always play this game, which is especially if we're sitting around waiting for one last actor. You don't want that actor to feel bad when he walks in the room because he's a few minutes late. And
Right.
I if anybody's more than 10 minutes late more than twice, I give them a really hard time.
Yeah.
Really hard. It's like, you know what? You are holding up all these people that are here. It's not just because I'm going to wait for
Tom's
you.
looking at
Right.
Ollie.
Don't be late. Don't be late. Don't be late. This is rude. You could be late once. There could be a problem.
It
that happened,
happens.
but set your alarm clock earlier. Do whatever you have to do. Don't be late. So, but when you're waiting for that actor or whatever, I would say things like, okay, My guilty pleasure is Undercover Boss. That's what I watch. And I'm
Oh,
just, that's
yes.
why, what's yours? And then everybody starts talking about what their particular favorite guilt,
Breaking
whether-
down walls and like showing a piece of themselves.
that
Right.
and just silly conversation that
Yeah.
has nothing to do with anything. It's not important.
Right.
But they forget about the fact that they just got a dentist bill that's $2,000 and how the hell are they going to pay for that?
Right.
Yeah.
Instead,
It's like a
they're
download.
thinking about some other silly, what do I watch that I'm embarrassed to tell people about? Oh, yeah, I watch Antiques
Right.
Roadshow or whatever it is. Antiques Roadshow
Yeah.
is a good one. But, there's some of those really trashy, nasty ass shows. And so that kind, and then when that last person does walk in, you go, okay, the question of the day was, what's your favorite? So those kinds of silly questions and
Oh, and
things
it brings
just to
them
make-
right into it.
Just to fill their heads with other
Exactly
thoughts.
right. Exactly
Well,
right.
it puts
Think
them in a
about
positive
something
place,
else.
too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because we're then just sharing. Now we're just a family.
That's right.
We're
It's
just
silly.
family doing fun things and having a good time.
That's right.
We're not doing a
one of the
job.
other questions I would say is things like, okay, when I was a kid, my rock star was Roger Daltrey. I was desperately in love with Roger Daltrey of The Who. I wanted
choice.
him to be
It's a good
my boyfriend.
choice.
And so I went around the room and said, who was your rock star? And, people, it was about your age range. So they're mentioning some people I don't even know, young new singers and stuff. And my favorite thing was, though, when the girl, this was Nickelodeon, and Shannon was sitting next to me and she was taking the log, and she's a casting director and she's wonderful and lovely. And just before I'd let everybody else give their opinion first, and then I said mine was Roger Daltrey. And she said, I don't know who that is.
Oh.
And I had to give her the reference of the CSI opening in order for her to know who Roger Daltrey. Oh yeah, I know who that is now. But I thought she doesn't know who the Who.
Oh no.
I'm so old.
We're
No,
kind
no.
of getting to that place now with the next generation
that
too. So
wild?
like
Oh, yeah.
when you say cassettes, you look at us like with a smile, like some of our audience are like, excuse me.
I know.
What's that now?
I know.
What's that?
What's
They've
a- what's a
never been
VHS?
without a smartphone.
Yeah.
They've never been
Right.
without. They always have had all that information.
Oh my gosh.
At their fingertips.
Oh, there's like videos online with kids who like they'll put 3 kids in a room and give them a rotary phone and tell them to
Oh,
call this phone number,
no.
and
They'll give you.
Will
I'll give you
not-
$50 if you can do it. Yeah.
and they don't figure it out.
I had that experience.
Wow.
I was working at a music store and this kid had just gotten out of a lesson and his phone had died. And I was like, "Oh, you can use our phone. Do you know your mom's number?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I was like, "Oh, you can use our phone." And he picked it up and I hear behind me, he goes, "Call mom."
Oh.
I was like,
Siri, call mom.
"No, it's not gonna,
Or-
you gotta dial it."
Or I see this little kid, like a toddler, maybe not even walking yet, with an iPad. With a magazine,
Ah,
pressing on it,
Oh.
I've seen that.
trying
The
to
whole
make
room.
it.
I've seen that.
Isn't that weird?
It, well,
Oh.
Different age.
So
It's
much
'cause they
has
typically have an
changed
iPad.
technology-wise in the last, few decades. Few.
Massive.
Like just couple. Last 20
decade.
years last decade it's been insane.
Truly,
Uh,
truly.
uh,
The advancements are ridiculous.
and that does translate to voiceover as well. Let me so in the voiceover world, since you've retired, what are the changes that you've noticed for the realm of voiceover technology? How has that changed things? Has that changed performances? Have you heard that in
That's
shows?
so
Anything
interesting.
you wish you had?
I think most of the stuff that I found as useful tools for me at that time, by the time I was retiring, they were there. They were in place. For example, when I did a show called Rescue Rangers for Disney a million
yeah.
years
Oh,
ago,
It's a little show.
it's
Just a
just a little
it's,
show.
If you heard
it's
about it.
Chip and Dale
Yeah.
and their sped voices. And so back then we were recording on reel to reel.
Oh,
Oh.
man.
Cassette. Now we're going back a
Totally
generation
different
before
experience.
that. And we would have to slow the tape down
right.
50%. Record the actors acting like this,
Oh.
and then bring it back up to speed. Have to listen to the whole thing to make sure we had clarity and that it didn't sound like actors acting like
Oh my
this.
gosh.
And then go back and do pickups the same way, slowing it down again, recording the pickups, going back. So, but now we can do that without
in the booth.
right,
Right.
instantly, and we don't have to worry about changing the speed as far as how fast the tape is running
Yeah.
through, and how the timing will, it's just going to change the timing when we go back and do ADR because the tape was actually being sped. I mean, it was actually
Oh my
running
gosh, I didn't think about
faster.
that.
I'm sure the
And
results
now
are
it's
a lot
not going to
more
link up anymore when it's not going to
consistent.
sync.
Wow.
So
But I mean,
Wow.
that does
Wild.
speak to a lot of like talent and discipline to that. Having to, again, like, it's restriction breeds creativity where it's like, hey, this is what we got. So you get really good at doing one thing. And then once you have the tools, once the technology gets there, then it's like, oh, now we can run at 10,000 miles per hour versus like people now who are like, oh, I have the great technology, but I don't have any of the discipline or any of the talent.
Right.
So they're kind of, I don't want to be rude, but it's like they're kind of just wasting the potential.
a little bit.
Where it's
A
like,
little bit.
Well-
like I remember when I was in film school, like learning every single editing system, so I could figure out on my own, like I like this one better.
Yeah.
I know how the industry does it, and I see this one, but like I like this one because it works better for my brain.
Right.
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 So-
but I think that learning all those is key.
Mhm.
Is learning all. It's like studying acting. You
Right.
should study with as many different people as you can, and nobody's going to be perfect for you.
No.
But you're going to pull 5 techniques from that guy, and 3 from that woman, and 2 from here, and you're going to go, now it's my technique because I've cobbled it together to make it work.
Well,
for me."
What
hodgepodge
works
That's
of-
your
for,
utility
for how
belt.
my brain interprets
Exactly
what I'm
right.
looking at.
That's right. And what works for somebody else does not work for me. I can't get there. And we talked a little bit before about needing to do things like cry on cue. Or laugh on cue,
Ooh,
or
yeah.
laugh on cue at 9 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
which is hard to do, really hard to
Yeah.
do. And that's like a real skill that you have to learn how to make that happen. And you find what technique it is. Is it actually thinking of something incredibly funny, or is it just you have technically figured out how to make yourself laugh? And what I would do in a group when a person was having a hard time with that early morning laugh,
Mhm.
pardon me, was I'd make everybody in the laugh. Everybody in the room laugh. So let's just do that together. All okay, now laugh. See how
That's
natural
great.
that is?
Oh, yeah.
That's
Because everybody helps you. Everybody lifts you up to that laugh, and then you can do it.
I just want to make a little side comment that we were all just directed by Andrea Romano.
Yes.
You did very well.
Life
Happened.
goal
You did very well.
achieved.
Resume.
You did very well.
I can't afford that. Though.
I actually kind of want to speak to like your experience with acting. Corey and I, we both have theater backgrounds. I went to college for theater arts. You did stage shows during your time in Manhattan. Did you have any
New York.
particular shows, characters that stuck with you or stood out as your favorites?
You know, I have a Manhattan story that I want to tell you, but first I want to go back to graduate school and at Rutgers. I did a show called Uncommon Women and Others, and that was written by a playwright named, it's going to escape me right now. Go ahead, go for it, you guys. Uncommon
got
Women and
it.
Others. She passed away recently. She had a great play on Broadway, wonderful woman. And it's important because I want to actually mention her in the story. Let's see how fast you are.
Common women and others.
Yes?
I'm sorry, I'm not fast enough.
Oh my,
I don't
that's
have
it.
the, I don't have the technical skill.
We need to get a 5-year-old to
Tom,
get
you
with an
failed.
iPhone.
You failed.
I knew magazines.
Wendy Wasserstein.
What?
I do have a
Answered in
brain.
the computer.
Wendy
Google.
Wasserstein.
That's
Terrific.
experience over technology. just saying.
Terrific playwright, very successful. Had 4 major plays that she wrote, and then she passed away, a young woman.
Wow.
But what was so cool at Rutgers was Uncommon Women and Others. It was all about these students at one of the 7 sister schools. I forget which one it was, Mount Holyoke or something. And it was an autobiographical play, and her character's name was Holly, and I was playing that character. And she came and was on site as a resident as
wow.
we
Oh, wow.
did this, and it was fantastic. That was so wonderful. It was a magnificent experience to be able to not just have the playwright explain what she was talking about, what she wanted to get across in her play, but what was she feeling as a person in this scenario that we were
Right.
depicting. And it was
Right.
fantastic, wonderful. But as far as New York, one of the only things I did, now remember I was 200 pounds, 5 foot tall, Italian Jew from Eastern Long Island. Not that many roles written for you.
Yeah.
Right.
And so although I did go out on a lot of auditions and stuff, there was only one play that I was actually doing in New York, and it was called Marat Sade is its common name. It's that incredibly long name about the incarceration of blah, blah, blah of the Marat
Oh,
Sade.
yeah,
This
yeah,
goes on.
yeah.
Right.
And it was a very kind of experimental project. And we were rehearsing in this, Manhattan has some funky ass places.
Oh, yes.
Where all kinds of
I
independent.
lived there for
That's
like
fair.
3 years.
Yeah,
It's a strange spot.
It is. And we were doing this in this club, and I use that term very loosely. It was downstairs in a basement, and I just kept looking at these kind of machines, and then the occasional chain and weird stuff, and the need to always be out by 10 p.m. We had to be out by 10 p.m.
Oh.
Absolutely out by 10 p.m.
I
because it
think I know.
reverted to a S&M
Yeah,
gay
yeah.
bar.
Uh-huh.
And they did not like women in that
Oh.
space.
Oh.
So we had to get the heck out of there before it
10 p.m.
Oh,
yeah.
before it went.
Wow.
And and fine, okay, I get it. I have no problem with that. I come up one night so it's maybe 9:45. I come up, and as I'm exiting the place, I hear these whistles, regular whistles,
Yeah.
It's like sports whistles.
Right.
Lots and lots and lots. I'm like, what the hell? And I open the door, and there's all these bright lights and cameras and police barriers and people
Whoa.
protest. I'm like, what the hell? and it was the set of the Al Pacino movie Cruisin'.
Oh my God.
And they were going to shoot in that basement where I was rehearsing that play, the Murat Saad. But they were
That's
protesters protesting because, and it was so weird because they were protesting how they thought this section of society was being depicted. And I
Right.
thought, do you have access to the script? Why are you assuming that this is a negative
Yeah.
depiction
Right.
of these people? And,
Right.
and it, in fact, was not.
No.
There was a murderer, and there was a part of it was going into that world to find out. But
Are you,
but it was
are you
so
talking about today's time? That sounds like today's time.
I know. But that was so interesting to come out of that. So when you say, do I have any memories of my Manhattan theatrical experience? That
That's
was
a
like,
pretty.
it was intense, wasn't it? It really was. And
Pretty
then I
poignant.
watched the movie, which is a terrific movie if you haven't seen
is.
it, Cruisin'. And then I watched as they show the scene in the staircase going down into the, and
You're
then
like,
they,
"I've walked
and then
down
they
those stairs."
shot the scene inside that place, and terrible things took place in there. I quit that play after that.
Oh.
It was falling apart anyhow. It was
Okay.
there was weird. I had chosen to play a character who had gone blind because it takes place inside a sanitarium. Everybody's it's an
Right.
insane asylum.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Everybody's got
Jaunty
problems
rom,
and stuff.
yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a nice light comedy. And so I had a friend of mine who was working with me, and I forget what she had picked as her infirmity and stuff, but she was like, her job was to take care of me. And then at one point, I remember during the rehearsal, I forget what I did. I put a rag around my eyes or something that made me blind. And I remember her grabbing me and pulling me away, and I'm blind. I can't see it. I'm like, what the hell? And we're rehearsing. We finished the scene, and I'm like, what? She goes, there's one guy who's deciding to become naked around you because you're playing a blind character, and he's just placing his parts close by so that when you're trying to find a chair or a wall, you're going to end up having to touch him. I'm like, okay,
Oh, great.
done.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm out of
Done.
here.
Thank you very
Wow.
much. Done.
It's been real.
I know,
I'm
isn't
out.
that wild? And then I made the Smurfs.
And now for something completely different.
Inspired by.
Isn't that wild?
That is crazy.
In the-
Oh my goodness.
In the same vein, I mean, with your acting experience, I know that you have done a few voices as well.
couple.
When you were doing
Yeah.
those voices, did you ever get like, did it satiate that theater bug in you? Did it ever make you go, oh, I really wish I?
No, it did satiate. It did. It was. It wasn't that I missed acting because I always felt that my directing style allowed me to act,
Mhm.
especially because it's come to the point
You're
where you
very
have to
active
do.
when you're in it.
I am, and I oftentimes there's actors that have to be recorded by themselves or an actor missing, and I would take that part and just act with the actor so they had
Something
again
to
something to
work
bounce off of. So I also felt like I love actors. I love actors. I love what they go through. I love the sacrifices they have to make to do what brings them the most pleasure. And so I have this wonderful sort of connection with actors, and I didn't know that I missed it until I started doing it again.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I loved being the voice of the Batmobile. That brought me such pleasure.
so cool.
That was joyous.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things I always loved, Tress McNeil does it the best, but when it would be things like, 8, 1, 8, 9, 9, 9, 5, 5, 2, 4. I just love doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I've showed up in many cartoons doing that kind of thing,
There
as
you go.
whatever it is, the back computer or a talking
You were
tombstone in the
Siri before
future or
Siri.
something. I met Siri. I taught a workshop in
Of course.
down
of
in
course you have.
Atlanta, and I was the keynote speaker, and I gave a private class to 10 students, and she was one of them. Susan Bennett was her name, and she always claimed to be the original Siri. So I don't know what that meant, whether she was replaced early on,
Right,
or I don't know
right.
what that
She was
meant.
replaced in the last few years. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
But she talked about months and months and months of just going in and recording words
garble.
and phrases and stuff.
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
thought, wow.
Yeah, it's very.
what a
it's,
cool gig.
it's very
Yeah.
scientific.
What a cool
Yeah.
gig.
Those are I think those
Nonsense
are the most
sentences
fun.
so that they could get the right vowels. and,
Right.
straight.
And things that would flow from one thing to the next
Mhm.
and all those options and yeah.
The voices of things that we use on a daily
Yeah.
basis is always so interesting
It's a
to
person
me. Like,
somewhere.
yeah,
Yeah.
somebody got that gig.
Right. Exactly. The talking gas pump. That,
Yeah.
Oh,
tells
Yeah.
you the very there's so much. When I first was teaching, so this would have been the mid '80s. I remember creating a list of options for voice work, And as I began to write them down, I'm like, my God, there's just a ton of stuff you can do.
Yeah.
Whether it was a talking watch or,
An action
industrial
figure
or
or-
exactly right, talking toys,
Commercial,
of course.
animation, video
so
games,
much.
narration.
Yes, industrial films when you first start working at Wells Fargo and you have to sit in a room with a cassette,
yeah.
and watch
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Pacific Sunwear for me.
Corporate
Sort of-
training.
Right, all that kind of stuff. So, and medical films. So,
Oh, yeah.
like when a new drug has come on the market and they're trying to pitch it to doctors, and they create this film, and you have to learn how to say those incredibly long
Oh, my gosh.
medical terms and pronounce them properly. And
It's right at the bottom
some
of the
people
screen.
were very, very good at that stuff, and some people just didn't have it. And so
Yeah.
you'd find those that were really good. The audition copy would come in and go, I know the 5 people that should come in and read for this. And someone else will go, oh, please, please let me try. I'm like, I have done this with you 5 times. And let me play for you the guy that does it well. And not insulting at all, just going, listen to what it is they do. And then I play it and they go, oh, okay. I get it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just saying, no, you can't do it. It was, let me show you why you're not as good as this guy. Even within this agency,
Yeah.
there's somebody else who can do it better than you can.
Right.
So I don't want to make you look bad ever. I always want you to be the best person for
Right.
the job that I'm submitting.
Well, there's so many because there's so many avenues to go down. Until you go on that avenue, you don't know if you're good or bad at it.
Correct. You have to try.
Yeah, you
You
have
have
to
to
try,
try.
but hearing it, I'm sure was like the yeah,
yeah.
no thanks.
Also,
And actors should feel like they know how to do it.
Right.
They should go in with that attitude.
Right.
And then, keep working. If it's not the best yet, keep working at it until you feel like, yes, I do that competitively with the other people who do that.
Right.
It's kind of like a witch
Right.
voice. Everybody can do Margaret Hamilton. What's your turn on it that's different? What's your take that's completely different? And you may start with the Margaret Hamilton witch, but then go somewhere else and make that go higher, go lower, give it more texture,
yeah.
give her,
and that
whatever.
stuff's like worth its weight in gold to actors, I'm sure, because I'm sure they're just used to hearing like, "Sorry, we went with somebody else," and like
Right.
that's the end of it.
No, I want them to know. I always do. And I always made it clear to agents that if they wanted to find out why that actor didn't get it, I would find time to tell them why.
Of course.
And sometimes it's
something
just a crapshoot.
A lot of people don't do anymore.
No, I know.
You don't
But
usually get to hear
sometimes-
why you didn't get
No,
something.
and I think that's a key learning point is
Yeah.
why. And sometimes there is no really good answer as to why
Yeah.
you didn't get it. It could have been you. It
Luck of
was.
the draw.
There have been times when I was casting and I would submit to Gordon Hunt and I'd say, "There's this guy and this guy and this guy," and he'd go, "Any of those 3
Oh,
would
wow.
work." And I'm like, "Well, how will we decide?"
man. It's a tough
And then I would look and go, "You know what? I know that he needs one more payment under SAG to make his health insurance.
There you go.
Let's give him that gig."
Oh, wow.
Or
Oh.
I know that this guy needs an ego boost. His wife left him and he needs something to get out of that.
Right.
Whatever.
Wow.
So I try to be a person about it too.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially when there was 3 people who could equally do the job. Really,
Right.
it was not like this
Yeah.
guy's a little bit better. If that guy's a little bit better, I'm going to hire that guy.
Yeah.
And that's part of the celebrity thing that's happened is I always fought for the best actor. If it happened to be the
Right.
celebrity, I would fight for the celebrity. If it happened to be a rank and file voice actor, I wanted to hire that guy, and that's
Yeah.
who I would fight for because I don't believe that the audience either watches a show on TV or streaming or goes and rents a DVD. Do they even do that anymore?
DVDs, Blu-rays.
What is this
Does-
DV?
Yes, DVD.
There's 5 of them there.
Nice,
Oh,
nice,
okay.
nice. Because there's a celebrity in it. That's not why the kid goes, "Mom, no, don't get that one. There's no celebrities in it." They don't.
Right.
If
Right.
it's a
The character.
good project and the voices do a good job, it will get a reputation and it will do well and people will want to see it.
Yeah.
If it's a celebrity for celebrity's sake and they are not the best person, it's probably going to tank. And
Yeah.
you spent some money on that celebrity probably, and the celebrity's not going to feel good about it, not going to want to come
No.
back and play again. And that always bothered me that people would. And what happened even worse is as Twitter became a thing,
Oh
Yeah.
boy.
they would say,
Emboldened.
"We need somebody who has a Twitter following of more than
Yeah.
50,000
Oh, yeah.
That's the
people."
new.
And that's not the criterion for me. I don't care if they're not a good actor. I don't care if they have 100,000 or 100 million followers.
Yeah.
I want the best actor on the piece, and I would fight. Sometimes I'd win that fight, sometimes I wouldn't. But there have been times when I had to hire someone who was not the best person. And the other thing that was so weird about it was, it's not a contractual thing. They don't ever say you must tweet this job out that we're hiring you for,
Oh.
which made no sense to me.
They're
Why
just
if you're
relying on the clout by itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they
they're
want to sell
relying
tickets.
on that the actor
power.
or the person, the
It's
celebrity, the person will
Once you see the name on the poster,
right, and they
or
will tweet about it.
They might tweet,
Right.
but they don't have to.
They don't have to.
it's,
There's
all-
not-
it's in all arenas real
There's
quick.
an interview with Sophie Turner. She talked about she's in Game of Thrones, and
Right.
she said, she's like, the girl who auditioned, it was down to me and her. was a far better actor than I was, but I had more Instagram followers.
wow.
And they told her that. They're like, you got it because of your following.
How
No,
about
that's
that?
100% the climate. But in a weird pivot way, I actually want to talk about Dark Knight Returns and how Peter Weller was in it instead of Kenneth Conroy. And it wasn't a celebrity thing. It was, and I believe you said it was like you wanted a different graveled voice for an older Bruce Wayne. And
Right.
Kevin Conroy can play older Bruce Wayne.
Yes,
He
yes,
has.
we know that for
Yes.
Batman
For
Beyond.
this iteration, it was a
Right.
different thing. And so that's kind of like the defining line for me, where it's like, it's not a celebrity thing. It's not like a contractual thing. It is
It's about the
like,
story.
based on the story. It
Right.
serves the story. It serves the character. That's
Correct.
what should matter.
To tell the
Right.
creative vision.
Well
right?
said.
Yeah.
Hollywood is what Hollywood does.
They are.
It's on Broadway. They're doing it on Broadway too.
They're doing what on Broadway?
How many followers do you have?
Oh no,
Yeah.
is that
Celebrity.
true?
It's actually permeating most entertainment fields now.
Promo.
That
For advertising.
everything is. There's a minimum follower requirement to even audition in the first place.
Isn't
actually,
that something?
Well,
I'm
if I-
so glad that this is not like I'm out of my career already,
Right.
and because
Not having to do
I
this.
have no social presence as far as I don't have Facebook account, I don't have a Twitter following, I don't. And everybody always keeps asking me why don't. It's like I could barely get through my 3 email accounts because I had different ones, and my
Yep.
voice messages and my texts.
There's a
That
lot.
was
That's a
lot of
enough,
stuff.
and then to
Lots.
follow the other stuff. And I do remember way back when. I also don't play video games very much because I remember way back when Nintendo first came out with Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And playing, and going 3:30 in the morning. Oh my God! I thought I have such an addictive personality. I can't do that because I have too much work to do. So
Yeah.
I let work be my addiction, which it was for years. Joyous addiction. I was a workaholic in the throes of my addiction. And I there was one point I remember when someone said, "How many projects are you working on?" Bruce Timm asked me. And I looked at them all because they were all in production at one phase or another. Might have been ADR, might have been initial casting, whatever.
Right.
I was doing 11 projects
Oh, my.
simultaneously, which is just
Wow.
excessive. It's
Yeah.
just pure,
Wow.
pure greed. I wanted to work on all the good shows because they were all coming out at the same time.
and you did.
It was Land Before Time. It was Animaniacs. It was Pinky and the Brain. It was Batman the Animated. There were so many that overlapped. Some were
Right.
many years into production. Some were just beginning, but I wanted to do them all because they were all good and all different and all interesting.
Yeah.
And you sign on for a project and you have no idea how long it's going to go. It may get the plug pulled before you even finish the initial order. It may do that first 13 and that's it. It may go on for years and years and you make over 100 episodes or whatever. And so then you've already kind of planned you wanted to do work for somebody else and they finally have a project and they come to you and you're like, yes, I said I would and it's here. And yes, I'm still doing that other project. I didn't think it would still be lasting this long, but it's a good show. And so then they start.
Starts
Stacking
piling
up.
up.
So I learned how to exist on like 4 hours sleep.
But that's kind of the dream in a way too.
It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
my dream, certainly.
There you
It
go.
was. It was heaven.
Speaking about now you're in
These
retirement, and if you can tell by my shirt, I'm all the DC'd out kid.
Uh-huh.
I don't think there's a DC property that you touched that I was like, that's all right. But I was like, I was in it. I was subscribed. I was addicted to. That was my addiction. I was
Thank
like,
you.
3 a.m. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
2 more hours.
Nice.
How often do you hear other showrunners or producers from different studios asking you to come back?
I have been made a couple of offers. And it's lovely. It's very lovely. And when so many of those people are my friends, so we're in contact
Right.
anyway. And they all tell me they miss me and that
Yeah.
the industry is different.
You could divulge. You could
And
give
that's
us-
but somebody did reach out to me about a project that I signed an NDA, so I can't discuss
There you
it.
go.
But it was a very interesting project and extremely difficult and absolutely something I could do well. I knew I was the person for the
This
job.
is you. Yeah.
And it was somebody I worked with at the very beginning of both of our careers. And I
Wow.
loved her and I wanted to do another project with her all these years later. But I said to her right at the very beginning of our conversations about it, I said, it's going to have to be enough money to make me feel foolish if I don't take it. You know what I mean? It's got to have to
Yeah.
be that
Right.
much.
Right.
So be like, you idiot, you're never going to get offered more money than that. Take the job. And it was interesting to me. So that's the first thing is, does the job interest me? Does the project interest me? Do I have the stamina for what it's going to take? Because this is going to be a really complex piece.
A lot of time investment into
A
it.
lot.
Yeah.
And you put your soul into it. You just do. I
Right.
don't ever sign up
Yeah.
for a project that I'm not going to put my soul
Yeah.
into it.
The hundreds of
And
hours of casting.
That's
and
it.
all that.
And then we had many meetings and we talked about it and I came up with a bunch of ways to help them improve the process they were trying to do, and they were kind of putting the cart before the horse, and they were going to make it harder for themselves later on down the line. And I gave them all the ideas, and I also said, if for some reason this doesn't work out, here's 5 other directors that you should look at because they're all good people. And I said, no ego. I'm the best person for this job. I know I am. I have the most experience. That's just plain simple years, right? And then I went away for a vacation and I came back and they said, okay, we're going to get back into it and we want you to start casting on it, even though we're not going to go into production for another 6 months, but we want to get it going. I said, fine. We don't have a deal in place yet, Andrea. Okay. I had told them exactly what I wanted in that first conversation and they didn't blink. And then she goes, okay, let's negotiate. So you wanted per session, and I said, I don't want to negotiate with you. I told you, I was trying to save you time from the get-go.
Right.
Because I wasn't messing around. I was like, this is what you'd have to pay
This
me.
is it. Boom, bottom
Because
line.
otherwise, and I was able to tell her, because I know her so well for so many years, I was able to say, if you can't pay me that much, if I don't know that that's going to be the paycheck for this job, when things get really tough, which they will, this will be a very hard production. And there's going to be times when it's really, really hard. When we reach those points, I'm going to be so angry with you for not paying me what I know I'm due to do that hard work.
Right.
And that will affect our personal relationship as well. And I don't want that to happen.
So
Yeah.
So your call.
Wow.
You know, I see those other 5 people, which they did.
There's on Facebook, there's like a social media group where like I liken myself a director and writer and all that stuff, but I'm part of it, and like the one top line thing says like all paid work. And it's like not like, hey, you're paying scale, you're paying like all the money you have because you have the budget to do that, but you're respecting the time, you're respecting the talent, you're respecting them, like the actors, like you said, like loving them, that they're going to get involved and invested in their characters, and then going out there and spending their time to do it, because it isn't for the money, but it is kind of like, hey, like we all have to manage our time wisely.
Right.
So it's
You bring up an interesting point too. The other thing about having the actors all together and making them feel like they're a part of this thing we're doing together is there's always conflicts time-wise. Somebody else wants you the same time I want you. But if this experience is good enough, I bet we'll get first position. Meaning you're going to want to come to this one. And then the other show is going to have to do the pickups.
Priority.
And that's good for me. That works for me because then we get to play together. And it's I make that comparison. I say play because we got to have fun. If we're not having fun making cartoons, we are doing something wrong.
Very wrong.
We're
At the end of the
absolutely,
day.
even if it's a really intense, Red Hood, movie,
Oh, yeah.
it still has to have, we have to have fun making it. And there's got to be those wonderful moments of breaking the tension because it gets really intense,
Yeah.
I remember this one scene we were doing ADR, and it was one of those fight scenes where just one guy's just getting the crap beat out of him, fight, and he ends up going over this, falling off a bridge to his death, essentially. But we couldn't always kill everybody. We had to kind of leave it questionable.
Show me the body.
Nobody.
That's what
Exactly,
we said.
nobody. And we had what we called keep alive groans. So when the character was knocked unconscious and would be laying on the ground, we'd have them. So the,
Right.
so
Like it
the
wasn't
kids
brilliant. Yeah.
didn't think that those, and we did a lot of those. We had to go
Yeah.
back in ADR, a lot of keep alive groans, we
Wow.
called them. But this one was just like, the room was really tense. Somebody had come in and there was fighting going on. It was something going on in the room that was uncomfortable. And so I'm showing this actor and he wasn't really good at, that kind of thing. It was sounding very cartoony what he was doing.
Wilhelm.
And we needed a little icebreaker there. And so as the guy's looking at it, the character is falling and he's wearing a cap and the cap falls off and it falls into the water. And so the guy disappears and then the cap hits the water. And so I said, here's what you need to do. Echo me. Do it like this. My cap! And everybody broke up laughing and everybody forgot. So it was just like feeling out the room
Yeah.
and having fun, even though it's a really intense piece that you're working on. You want to make sure that there's
I'm a firm believer that stuff comes through in the end product. People can tell if you enjoyed yourself or if you didn't making something, and they can feel that energy.
100% I agree with you on that. Absolutely. I think that if a cartoon, if say even just let's say a 30-second sequence, if you guys had to record it over and over and over again, the director is beating you up and you're not getting it and this, I think that will come through.
Oh, yeah.
I do. I think that you may not understand what it is when you're watching it, but there'll be an unpleasant feeling as you're watching that going, boy, that scene doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And when you're a kid, you sense it. You can't articulate it maybe, but it's there as well.
Yeah,
It's,
on an emotional
Yeah.
level
Right.
at least.
that's
yeah.
right. It's like, boy,
I like
Something's off.
I like that approach a lot because I think you hear a lot of horror stories on live film where it's like the director is like slapping actors or doing all these things to
Oh,
get the actor
yeah.
into like a negative space. Where
Right.
your approach, and I subscribe to it too, where it's you can always get a better thing out of a positive experience. Like
Absolutely.
because people are more encouraged to do it. When then you
course.
get a backlash from an actor, it's like I'm an actor, you don't have to treat me like an animal.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it's like those kind of
Exactly.
things.
But you're right when they do things like tell a kid that their dog just died to get them to cry.
Yeah,
And that's
jeez.
all those things are horrible.
terrible.
There's a way to get these kids.
In a positive therapeutic way.
Absolutely.
Don't scar the actor.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I love working with
Don't-
kids.
don't
I
Kubrick it.
love the sound of a
Freaking.
real kid's voice. I love their breathing in the middle of a sentence really weird. I love the way they'll pronounce a word completely wrong, and then all of a sudden we all have to start pronouncing it that way because it's so cool.
Right.
And then the little loops where they're and then they're and then
I love
and
that
Right?
so
And
much.
like- and
It's so cool. It's
So
and that's a
cute.
really nice thing for a female actor who's going to be doing kid voices because there's work for them doing that.
Yeah.
To pick up on those kinds of things. And those sweet little
then?
wonderful right. We did a whole cartoon, Randy Beeman it was called, and I think that was part of what? Tiny Toons or Animaniacs, I can't remember. And it was a little kid who'd come
Oh,
outside,
the runs
big
all
head
the way
kid.
up to the thing and
Yeah,
runs back?
right.
Oh,
Randy
yeah.
Beeman, they were called. And you run around and go, okay. So one time, this kid went over to the school and he did this and this. Okay, bye. And he
runs
go
away.
back and runs out. That's it.
Yeah.
And it was perfect. It was exactly the way he was a young kid, but he was probably 12, 13 years old, but he was acting 5 or 6 years old. And he
Yeah.
had one of those really youthful kid
Oh,
voices.
yeah,
so it
yeah,
worked
yeah.
out perfectly. And that's the ideal. An older kid who sounds like a younger kid.
Mm.
Because you
Oh, that's
can
perfect.
direct them more. They have a little more
Emotional-
strength to last a
yeah.
little longer.
Right.
Emotional intelligence, a little bit, yeah.
I don't know how the dating world works because I've always sounded young, but they're like, oh, you sound. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Aw. Aw.
I'd like to actually move to the next part of
Yeah,
our show and
absolutely.
talk to something that you're a fan of, but I do have one. It's a personal question. I'm sorry. I
Okay.
grew up in San Diego.
Oh, cool.
What part of town did you live in?
Poway.
Oh, okay.
Poway.
Yeah.
And I have a
Love-
half brother who lived down there.
Oh, that's
and that's
awesome.
why. And he very kindly one day called me up knowing that the winter was coming back east and said, there's a $100 flight from JFK to LAX. And if you want to come and stay with me, he was kind of repaying us. Yeah, I call him a half brother. He was my oldest brother's best friend. He lived with the family for years.
I got
And
those.
it was his way to repay our family was by allowing me to live with him, which was so
Aw.
sweet. And so within like 2 weeks, I packed my life up in my mom's attic in Stony Brook, Long Island, and moved to San Diego with no job possibility, no nothing,
Yeah.
and lived down there for probably half a year before I went
Wow.
up there.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
The agent
That's awesome.
assistant. Yeah, loved San Diego. Still
Yeah,
love San
it's a
Diego.
beautiful town.
It's gorgeous. It has a reputation of being either retired or military. But come to find out, there's a much more vibrant, youthful life there
Yeah,
than and I
now.
think Comic Con
Has
has
played
been a major force in that.
very
I can
large
see
part
that,
of
yeah.
It has people from all over the world, young people from all over the world, have gone there and went, it's beautiful here.
It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And they're so smart, and I hope they never move Comic Con from that.
Oh, God.
They talk about other places. They talked about Vegas. That's
No.
so
No.
wrong.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
but I mean, it's hard to think of where could facilitate such a big. The only other place I can think of is Chicago.
Yeah.
That could facilitate, and that's not the same thing either at all.
No.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful city, and that
Yeah.
would also that's
The
better than
food.
Vegas. I think.
Food.
The food is so good.
Oh my god! Oh my god! I just got back, and it's
like
just
3
Yeah.
a.m.
magnificent.
burritos.
Oh my God,
yeah.
Everything.
But San
Rolled
Diego,
tacos.
beautiful,
Kangaroo.
beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Um,
Where did you live in San Diego?
Oh, all over the place.
Oh.
It was like El Cajon.
Yeah.
Pine Valley,
Okay,
which is way out in the
yeah,
mountains.
right.
But yeah, San
And
Diego.
Poway, when I moved there, was really a one-horse town. It was
Yeah.
tiny and nothing, and now it's
It's
quite a
still-
large city.
It's still kind of.
And
It's a
unfortunately,
two-horse town.
Yeah, no, it's large. It's big, and it's unfortunately known now because of the horrible
Yeah.
shooting that took place in the
Yeah,
synagogue
yeah.
down there.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's a neat place, and they have rodeo days every year. It's a
Yeah.
big cowboy event that takes
Oh,
place down
okay.
there, and I'm not a cowgirl in any way, but it was just kind of a
But
fun
so
thing
cool.
that Poway is on the map
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
Good thing.
So next part of our show, what we always like to do is we like to talk to our guests about something that they are a fan of. And in asking you what your favorite movie was, you said it was Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet
Oh.
from 1968.
Which I was so excited. This is my favorite version of this
Oh,
show.
excellent.
Yes.
yeah.
For many reasons.
Never watched this. I've only seen Romeo plus Juliet, and I always
Oh.
laughed at "Give me
Baz
my
Luhrmann?
long sword,"
Oh,
and then it's
yeah.
a
Oh,
gun.
yeah.
But I've seen this, I was like, Oh,
I understand.
This is how it's supposed
This is what it's actually supposed to be.
Have you seen it yet?
I watched it.
Oh,
I
now you
loved
have.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
I watched it for you.
Thank
For
you.
you. I
Thank
just let you know. I would
I'm
never
glad
watch.
I didn't disappoint.
No,
Great.
no,
Great.
no. You've never disappointed.
It's a stunning movie.
Yeah.
And it was exactly at the time 68. I would have been 13 years old.
Mm.
So it was one of the first depictions of Romeo and Juliet at the proper age.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because they always were depicted as much older actors, adults, adults,
Yeah.
and not even like young
Bearded
adults.
adults.
Like old adults.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it didn't make a lot of sense. But I remember as a very young child, I learned to read really early because I had a lot of older brothers and sisters, and reading was a really cool thing. And I remember that my local library had a book that took Shakespeare plays, and they made prose from the poetry.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, they would include a couplet or a section of the play in its poetic form. And it so moved me and it so touched me. And I remember reading 1,000 times, "O happy dagger, this is thy sheath, there rust and let me die," and weeping every time I would read it, just weeping, 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 thinking about a 13-year-old girl, a girl my age, so in love with someone who was now dead at her feet, being so desperate that she would take a sword and kill herself. And it would make me cry every single time. That particular film, and we all have seen and read many different interpretations
Oh,
of
yes.
that
Yes.
particular
Yeah.
play,
We've been
whether
in
it's
them.
West Side Story, right?
Yeah.
West Side Story, or whatever, any
Yeah.
kind of new interpretation, Romeo plus Juliet, all that kind of stuff. And what's one of the most interesting things to me is the interpretation of the text, as in, what are you going to cut? Because it's such a long
Yes.
play.
Yes.
It really
Right.
is. And
Liberties.
it's hard to get a contemporary audience to sit through the whole thing, start to finish,
Oh yeah.
uncut. And so I think Zeffirelli's cut was brilliant. I think he took out some of the fat. I think he took out some of the poetry, which is gorgeous and should be taught and learned and people should be aware
Right.
of. But as far as a live performance or a filmed performance, it doesn't help move the story along. It's just beautiful poetry.
You're right.
It doesn't move. And that's what we've learned in drama these days is it has to move. It has to move forward. And these things don't move forward. I was sad that he chose to cut, but I totally understood the friar's speech
Yeah.
when Romeo first comes to
Yes.
say, "Will you marry us?" And that's a beautiful soliloquy, that wonderful, as he's picking the
He always
herbs.
likes to put little friars in there, and they just say like that they have
The
this
beautiful
monologue.
poetry.
Yeah, and you're like,
Yep,
Yeah.
it's the job of the
Instead-
friar.
exactly.
Yeah.
But like you said, it doesn't
Exactly.
move.
It makes it
Right.
very hard for the actor because they're basically spouting gorgeous words. They, for themselves, have to find out, why are they saying those
Yeah.
words?
Yeah.
Why am I standing in this field picking this, talking all about this? Why is, that whole thing? So subtext becomes really important to those actors. But what I also loved about this particular production was its lavish production style.
Oh my gosh.
And I had the great pleasure of hiring Olivia Hussey
Wow.
and Carrie Elways to play Queen Gertrude and Hamlet in a Pinky and the Brain episode.
Yes.
And that really was like pinching
Oh
myself.
my
And Carrie and
gosh.
I have become very dear friends. I have a text from him today. He's
Oh my
my dear,
goodness.
dear,
Amazing.
darling friend.
Wow.
Can you tell him that we also don't want to see a redo
Oh
of
my
Princess
God, what a
Bride?
terrible idea.
yeah. His
I loved
response
his
was
response. Excellent, wasn't it? Spot on.
perfect.
When I heard, this has happened so many times, we just go, why are you remaking something that was so good?
Why?
Why?
That was
If
really
it was
lightning in a bottle.
If it was a bad movie based on good
Yeah.
material and you're like, I can make a good movie, great.
Yes.
Then remake the film.
Do it better.
But
sure.
When
What
there's
that group
all
did.
that one,
Rob Reiner and all.
oh,
like,
I mean, the quotes that people say all the time and the references, and there's just,
As you wish.
it's perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
It
I mean,
is perfect.
And I've always said, like, just take more risk on the original stuff. Get some new
exactly.
talent stuff.
Exactly. Spend more time coming up with something
Stop
original.
muddying up the
Right.
past.
So it can maybe become a classic someday.
Exactly. Right. That we still talk about now.
Yeah, right.
And I will watch it. I mean, I think it's on, I think I've recorded it and I've just left
yeah.
it there to watch and watch.
Whenever you
And you
need.
should buy Carrie Elway's book if you haven't, the one where he talks
I
about
have.
it. It's so cool. He gives all kinds of wonderful stories about what happened on the set. And
It's actually how I
inside.
learned how to pronounce his name correctly.
Oh,
when I
is?
read his book, because
Yeah.
he says like Elvis, and I was like, oh, I've been doing it wrong.
Elvis, yeah. He's so dear. But Olivia Hussey, she was extremely generous with her stories. She was quite nervous and still gorgeous
Yeah.
when she came in to do this episode. And like her little hands were shaking. And so I take her hands in mine. I'm like, I promise you, you're going to have a fantastic time. And we're going to just laugh and have fun. And she played Queen Gertrude. It was perfect. She was excellent. but she told these great stories about the production of her Romeo and Juliet. I think the filming took 2 years plus.
Wow.
Wow.
But when you watch that film, it will become very clear that the dubbing,
Oh yes. Very.
the entire film is dubbed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she said she's convinced that Zeffirelli kept her there for the year because he was just so crazy about her. And he loved her. He genuinely loved her. And she loved him too, not in a sexual way, but
Right.
they loved each other so much. And she was like, he just didn't ever want to let me go and do anything else. But well worth it because all that voice work is so good.
It's amazing.
It's because you see those scenes and you know it can't possibly have been
Oh,
mic'd.
yeah,
It
no.
had to have been.
and everyone is
Yeah.
so important. You can't risk that, like losing it to an echo or whatever
Absolutely.
you need.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and also some of those wonderful moments in the film, if you remember, like when the friar at the end, when he's showed up, he's realized
prevent
everything
her
is
from-
falling
Yeah.
apart. She is like, I'm staying, and he, I dare no longer stay. Juliet, I dare no longer stay. That's not in the play that way. He just kept adding it. I dare no longer
Wow,
stay.
yeah.
The horns are coming. The bat. I dare Juliet, Lady Juliet. I dare no longer stay. I dare no longer. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
Those kinds of
Urgency. and-
right,
yeah.
but it's not them trying to recreate
Not at all.
Shakespeare. It's just saying
Honoring it.
that word. Those words are so crucial to what's happening right now. And it's not just and he is a chicken, but I'm not just a chicken. But I dare not stay here with you. I screwed up so much. There's so many levels. So much he is saying with I dare no longer stay. I'm risking everything if I am standing here. I'm shamed before God. I'm shamed before the prince. I'm shamed before. I mean,
The
it's just
Montagues
Yeah.
and the Capulets and everyone.
everything. Nobody will ever trust me again, and I screwed up so royally. And I loved it. My intentions were all those things are in. I dare no longer stay.
Yeah.
I dare no. I mean, it's fantastic.
It really,
agree.
yeah.
I think the great thing that this film does, as you said, like taking liberties and what to cut out, like it kind of just hones in on the narrative of like this cautionary tale, and then like the prince there being like this, like, look, this all happened because you guys couldn't get your shit together. And it's like,
And because I didn't do anything as the prince, I also lost a
Yeah.
relative.
Yeah.
and it's like I'm glad there's this piece, but it just came too late.
Right.
And
right.
it's just like,
I know
Yeah.
it's vital
it
information
drives it so
now.
much harder. Versus,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's also that the silliness that they found in it too, like when he's at her balcony and he climbs up and he's like hanging by one arm, just going, "Oh my God!" And it's so silly. He kind of looks like a monkey the way he's hanging there. And that's perfect and wonderful and youthful and exuberant, and you get a chance to laugh.
is
and
the shooting star passionate, fiery love.
Well, it's you forget sometimes, having seen productions with these like 30-plus-year-old actors, that they are kids, all of
Right.
them.
Yeah.
And one
Yeah,
of
Robert Bones.
my favorite thing, I reference this movie all the time because when I was growing up, Mercutio was one of my dream roles to play on stage.
Good one.
And this is one of my favorite depictions for a couple reasons. And one of them is the fight with Tybalt. Because
Oh,
it
yeah.
becomes, the thing that's tragic about this version is it becomes a play. Like Tybalt's laughing, which in every other production, he's just this hot-headed, angry
Right.
dude
Right.
that hates Mercutio. But they're kids and they're sword fighting
Right.
and they're laughing and they're playing. And he stabs Mercutio by accident
Correct.
because someone gets in the way.
then the accident makes sense because
Yes.
they're kids and
Right.
they're playing.
And it's like I always reference
Don't
this
tell Mom, don't
version
tell Mom.
because I
Right.
I love the fact that Tybalt isn't just a bad guy.
Right.
He's just a kid.
Right.
And they were playing and they were making fun of each other. It's such a playground thing. And then someone else, some third party, messes up
Stepped
this
in.
game they
Yeah.
had.
With all the best intentions.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
of course. And then
Yeah.
it's just the Mercutio death in that scene is sadder because Tybalt also feels it. Where he's like,
Absolutely.
oh my God, I didn't mean to do this.
Right.
So
Right. And everybody kind of liked Tybalt.
Yeah.
He was one of those characters that kind of on both. Everybody liked Tybalt.
Well, and
he was
York,
a
I mean, he-
remarkable performance.
Oh
It's
my
Michael
God.
That was
York.
beautiful.
yeah, Michael York, you cannot go wrong.
I have to tell you though, that film came out. West Hampton Beach, where I grew up, is not even. It's a hamlet, which means that it only has 2,500 people living there year round.
Wow.
In the summer, it blossoms to like 25,000, but but year round, it's
Whoa.
2,500.
Whoa.
So it had one movie theater, terrific movie theater, and then the year that this movie came out, a second movie theater opened in town,
Whoa.
and it played Romeo and Juliet for the entire summer.
Wow.
So I saw
This
it
was your movie.
every week, and
Oh,
I wept
wow.
every week. And
Oh man.
and Olivia told me that one of those dresses, I think it was the red velvet dress, weighed
Oh,
like
yeah, yeah, the
35
dance.
pounds.
Oh.
And so
Whoa.
she had to really learn how to
Move
move
in-
in those
yeah.
heavy, heavy clothes.
The first bat
And-
suit.
and all those wonderful inside stories. I love meeting these
Oh
people
my
for those
gosh.
reasons, to hear those stories about how things were done and what they did, and
Oh my.
There's something about that story, and it's a timeless story. It's
It really is. Yeah.
It's West Side Story is a beautiful updated version of it. If you haven't seen that film, you really should. And the other thing that Zeffirelli did so well was make it accessible to us
Everyone.
kids,
Yeah.
everyone. You understood the words; they made sense of
It
it.
was a
I
new
know
generation.
exactly
It's relatable.
relatable. It made sense, and again, I think his key was the casting of children.
Right.
Young actors
Yeah.
to play it. And sweet Leonard Whiting, who I just fell in love with, as did every girl who saw that film. I asked Olivia how he was and what he was doing, and she said, to sort of bring this all round circle, you guys, he had a stroke several years after the movie and lost all his hair and put on some weight. They stayed very, very good friends and made his living doing voiceover.
Well, there you go.
Oh my
That is a full
Wow.
circle.
Isn't that the coolest,
You were
coolest,
watching
coolest?
him,
Full
then now
circle
he's in your
moment.
feed.
Isn't that something? It made me really happy. And that was another person I would have loved to have been able to hire
Right.
somehow and make that work out, but I just wasn't able
I
to.
will. So you were 13 when this film came out.
Correct.
Okay, so I was watching this. I am 27.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna bring it in because I'm the lowest common denominator in the group. It was a little weird seeing Olivia Hussey.
Yeah.
In an intimate scene, but also Leonard. Whiting?
I'm not sure. Whiting. I'm not sure. It must
Whiting.
be Whiting because it's one T.
I
So it
say
must be-
I say this as a straight male. His butt in those little legging things. I was like, my God, it's popping everywhere. I was like, no wonder all of the girls. I was like, I can't stop. I can't stop. I was like, I need to not look at it.
I choose not to
But
comment.
it's
It
like the
was-
thing is, it's one leg is white, one leg is gray. I'm like, I have to look. I have to look at his butt.
draws
My
you in.
eyes are pulled. There's
It's
nothing I can do.
wonderful, wonderful
That's
body. They both
America's-
had beautiful
America's
bodies.
ass.
They both had beautiful bodies.
Shakespeare's
You
ass.
see her for
English.
2 seconds, right? Because she jumps out of bed and you see her naked breast for like a second.
Yeah,
It's
and she's 16 at the time, so I was like, oh no, I don't want to see.
But
But I was
it-
like, for the art, for the film.
Yeah.
It's so lovely the way he did it. It was just
Classy,
the whole
yeah.
the whole way he dealt with that scene. And the other movie we haven't talked about that's along that same lines is, of course, Shakespeare in Love,
Oh yeah.
Yes.
which is
It's
the
my
most-
wife's favorite
Yeah.
movie.
It's a wonderful way of
Yeah.
bringing that movie in, and their production of Romeo and Juliet
Yeah.
within that is so wonderful.
Wonderful.
The blooming blood that comes out, which is just a scarf that
Oh,
unfolds.
I
it's
loved it.
Wonderful.
Oh my gosh.
It was terrific.
Yeah.
It's
I
like-
also I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Queen Mab speech as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
probably
Whoa, yeah.
such a because I watched this. The first time I ever saw this, I was in high school.
Okay.
I believe I was a sophomore in English, and we read the play first.
Same-ish, yeah.
From
So you're like
start
14,
to finish.
15.
Yeah.
Start to
Same.
finish, read the
Oh.
play, and then this is the one that our teacher was like, "This is what we're gonna watch."
Mhm.
So we watched this version, and I remember. I read the Queen Mab speech in the book because we read it aloud, right?
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, this is kind of cool." But seeing John McHenry, I believe is his name, perform it
That is his name.
was such like goosebumps. It gave me chill. Like to this day, even rewatching it now, and I've seen this 5 or 6 times. Every time, he brings it to a level where of like that kind of crazy, but still, kind of wake dreaming kind of thing.
Yeah.
I could watch that speech over
It's
and
a
over and over
wonderful
again.
interpretation.
Oh my
It's a
gosh.
wonderful interpretation.
And the backdrop of that big street and like
yes, yes.
I'm really mad, actually. Like, I wasn't like.
You're mad?
No, I wasn't like what I did with Hamlet. I wasn't
Oh.
told to watch this film.
Mm.
Right.
Before you read the play.
So like in the show, I've mentioned that like I never really got into Shakespeare and all this stuff because all my English literature classes were like learn how to take a test. Or like learn how to
Right.
pass your classes
Yeah.
during AP courses, get to college, and you're done.
Hmm.
And it's like I never got to and then like now I'm an artist. So
yeah,
it's like
right.
in some way academia kind of took a second back step for it for where I couldn't appreciate where all this came from and seeing different iterations, different types. And it's like, why isn't this part of like curriculum? Where it's like usually you read a book, but they don't tell you how to read the book,
Right.
where to be, what
Right.
place to have. Like also this is written hundreds of years ago.
Right.
So
Right.
it's like
Right. But it's so interesting to talk about. You have to learn how to read a play like that.
Mhm.
You have to learn how to read the footnotes. You have to see which folio you're reading from and all that kind of stuff.
different mediums, yeah.
But I had to learn how to read comic books because I didn't, it took me a while to go, oh, okay, that Batman and Superman scene, the blue box is Batman's thought process and the yellow box is Superman's thought process. And that balloon is what they're actually saying out loud. And I go there
Oh,
first
yeah.
and then there and then over to there where that, I mean, it's like I just,
Right,
because
right.
It's a different language.
It's,
Well,
it really,
really
is. And I
is.
felt like a total idiot
even in
because.
panels, it's like left to right, but then some panels are like diagonal. So you're like, do I go down
Correct.
first or I go left
Correct.
first and
Correct.
then back?
Correct. I had to learn how to read comic books. So
Yeah.
strange.
And all of them, they're in unless you're like shout out to Jonathan Hickman, who's pretty like streamlined. Like everything's just like one line, and then he'll break it up. It's very much like it's a whole new thing, and then like you're kind of zigzagging around, and you're kind of have to like, how does this person write?
Yeah.
And you have to figure out how.
Yeah, depending on who
Yeah.
the writer and the artist is, it's a different experience.
It is.
Every book, really.
It is.
But
You have
that's
to learn.
also, I mean, that's related to Shakespeare. Like if you look at it, you have to like, as an actor, when you're doing the lines, you see it looks like poetry.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have to know like some lines are their own thought,
Mm-hmm.
or some lines are actually like, this is one sentence, so just continue.
Right.
Don't stop.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
you
Just
can
because the end of a
continue.
line is
Yeah.
not.
It's very technical.
I never like was told that stuff, and I like had to figure that out. I was like, oh, okay,
Makes
so
it-
that's going on.
People go
somewhere.
to school to learn how to read Shakespeare.
That's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
It's-
right.
It is
yeah.
its own technical
It is.
It's my
feat.
favorite type of acting. Shakespeare, when I was in acting school, like that's one of the reasons why I've seen
Yeah.
this so many times, because I had acting teachers that were like, okay, you need to watch this because of the way that the delivery of the lines is just, it's just
Yeah.
comes off. I mean, it's just, you can't tell. Like,
Right.
and so Shakespeare has always been my favorite because it took so much prep
Yeah.
Yeah.
and the
there's-
scenic, yeah.
People who do it really well. I mean, my wife and I go to Griffith Park and watch the Independent Shakespeare Company every summer, and they're talk about making it accessible. These actors who study it day in and day out know how to deliver a line where like, I
Yeah.
didn't understand all the words you said, but I know exactly what you're
Right.
talking
Right.
about.
Right. It's like another language.
Yeah.
It is.
It's
So-
like
But with the right acting,
Yep.
you get it.
it's like we're talking with the figs.
Exactly right.
Yeah, fix
Exactly right.
Full circle.
See? Nicely done.
And when it's done well with the 1968 Romeo and Juliet, this was one of the first times I've seen a movie in a long time that was 2.5 hours about, and time became irrelevant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That it was really cool. I had like maybe one moment where I was like, I know how this ends. I know what's going on. I know how long this is, but I cannot stop.
Right.
Immersive, very
I
immersive.
cannot leave
No,
because
no
it
way.
feels like this is
Cinematography's-
real life
Yep.
right now.
I know.
And
I
then
know.
it's such a
Remarkable.
cool thing to have that disconnect and be like, no, they're doing too well. I can't
Right.
stop.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the big help is with the cinematography, which it won an Academy Award
Yes,
for,
Right.
and like how they shot all on locations for
Mhm.
those different places, and it was just like,
And I'm always searching for those places because aren't they the most beautiful?
Oh my gosh.
Oh
well,
my
it
gosh.
feels like like you've seen performances, you've seen on stage plays, and whether the stage is big or not, the production's huge, but it's like this is like, oh, this is where the scope,
This is
the scale.
what it actually
Yeah.
should be.
is.
Right. Right.
So it's
Right.
great, but
To
also
me, it's the penultimate. It
It
is.
really
Oh
is.
yeah.
like you get to see the scale, but also going in for the close up.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
getting in those
Yes.
performances,
Yeah.
and you're like,
Yes.
like I can't do that on a theater. And it's like a different medium,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah,
but it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
this
So-
is.
Zeffirelli, he's really good at faces.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
filming faces.
Sure
Like,
was.
if you look at his Hamlet too with Mel Gibson,
Damn
that's
good.
Damn.
Damn good.
Damn good.
You heard it
And
here
I'm sorry
first,
we
folks.
lost him recently. We just lost Zeffirelli.
Yeah.
He just
June.
passed. Yep.
Just
June.
June.
Yep.
Um,
Thank you for all the wonderful work you gave
Yeah.
us.
Thank you.
I mean, there is kind of a little bit of a fun fact in how all of this mixes. Michael York was on Batman the Animated Series.
Yes.
He played Tybalt
Right.
in
Right.
this movie.
That's right.
He also played a character called Dr. Montague Kane.
Right.
Oh,
Montague.
Montague.
Oh.
Brilliant.
Wow.
Brilliant.
Wow. I never
Look
put
at
that
you.
together. Montague King.
I
Right?
when I was researching, I was like,
Wow.
"What?"
He has a great voice, Michael.
Oh,
Great
yes.
voice.
Amazing.
Really, really recognizable and wonderful.
I
Yes.
mean, of
I
course,
love
I would quote him all the time from Austin Powers, but like,
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
good.
like, yeah.
So good.
steals every scene he's in. Quite a lot, Austin.
I feel like the appropriate way to move to the end of the show is to go and scene.
And
Ah,
scene, yes.
Nice.
Well,
Nice.
wonderful.
We'll get
This
you on
has
the next
been-
Batman anniversary.
Yes.
Okay.
I think,
Oh,
I think it's what,
alright.
next week?
No, it's a
Yay!
Batman
When
world.
when
It
your
is.
book's done, we'll have you back on.
I'd love that.
Yeah.
I'd love it. I think I'd love to
Fantastic.
do that. Thank you.
Is there any like current stuff that's kind of in the world that you want people to check out? I know that Batman Beyond has a
Yes, there.
anniversary and re-release.
Indeed, and we'll be making appearances at the New York Comic Con. I think it's the first weekend in October.
Nice.
So please come by and say hi.
My birthday.
And
Yeah.
yes, October 3rd. Excellent. Happy birthday
Oh,
to
look
you
at that.
almost. And I don't know what else is planned. I encourage people to come and see me at the Comic Cons that I do because I'll probably only do another year or so of them. I don't want to become I mean, how am I ever going to say this delicately?
We're
I
uncensored
don't
here.
want to become like a has-been. Oh, yeah, she was, and she's still
convention
showing up.
personality.
Exactly.
Right.
So I want to, while people still remember my work vividly because they just saw it recently and stuff, then, so maybe another year. So I'm trying to, and I'm actually putting this out there to your audience as well. I want to do all the Comic-Cons that there are. So if anybody has connections with Dublin Con,
Oh.
or
darn.
or or any of them anywhere, I want to do them. I love the connection with the fans,
Oh,
and
yeah.
many of them don't even come to get a signed autograph, which is fine because there is a fee for that, because
Right.
we have
Right.
to. But I just love that they come up and say, "You made a difference in my life." I had this one guy who came to me once and said, "I was on the road to being a gang member killer. I was going to
Whoa.
be a horrible person, and then I had Batman to come home to and watch every day after school, and it changed my
Wow.
life."
Wow.
And I thought, I can't have a more
I did it. That
is the
wonderful
gift.
I did it.
compliment. That is
That is
really.
good.
Yeah.
So I encourage people to come see me anywhere, and then if you can request of your local areas to bring me in, I want to do that.
Well, he had a
Wow.
great time.
Yeah.
He wouldn't stop talking about it
Andrea,
when he got
can I-
back.
Thank you.
Can I be on the record real quick?
Yeah.
You'll never be the has-been because I'll
Yes.
tell you this right now. There are people who are younger than me who write essays and put it online for millions of people to watch and still talk about your work.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
And so it's not even like my own personal thing, but like as a fact.
Thanks.
It's not my
You'll never-
nephew.
Thank you for
who's
that.
5 years old. Is
It makes me
don't-
very happy.
I don't think you can lose track of 35 Emmy nominations and
Over
win
40. Over
40.
She lost track at
And
35.
You lost track at 35.
Humble
You've
brag.
won Emmys. I don't think there will be a point where you're a has-been.
Thank you
Yeah.
for that.
No,
ever.
I have a fear. I have a fear. So thank you for that. I'm good for another year at least.
It's easy. I can see that. Though. It's
So-
easy to be looped in to that
Yeah,
crowd at a
yeah.
Comic Con. So I understand that.
I think you've created a legacy
Thank
at this
you.
point, and
yes.
it's far larger than 10 lifetimes can contain.
I mean,
And we're excited that you're
for me,
into our
it's always
studio.
You're in our studio.
It's kind of astonishing that you're in the room right now.
I'm so happy
for
to
any
be
of the
here.
DC animated stuff. It's always been if it's Bruce Timm, Andrea Romano, Dwayne McDuffie, Kevin Conroy, somewhere. Not even as bad, but just somewhere. I'm like, I'm in.
That's so
I know
cool.
Dwayne McDuffie's not with us right now,
Thank
but I was
you.
like, this is the Holy Trinity.
Thank
And
you.
he got the garlic just in case they're all against the wall. Like, you need that
Nice.
for the heart. You need that one for the
Nice.
heart and soul.
Nice.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Yeah,
you for
it's been a
having
blast.
me.
It's an honor
Oh,
to
you're
have you in the
very
studio.
kind, you guys. This has been
Yeah.
really fun for me.
Oh,
too.
great.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Yes, thank God. Yay.
Everybody at home, thank you too for watching, listening, however you watched Nerd On. We just are so appreciative to have you joining us in this wonderful moment. Please stop by iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and rate us, review it. That kind of stuff does help us. If you're new to Nerd On and what we are, check out nerdon.tv. It has all of the information of what it is that we do, videos, articles, and mini podcasts. But yeah, check it out, subscribe, share with your friends, your family. That's it. You know the drill. As always,
Nerd on!
Ending broadcast.